Welcome to the Locker Room, Episode 1. We're going to be going over the NHL free agency frenzy. Gave it a little bit of time to see how things develop. We have some pretty big names still on the board. But before we get into the episode, I am Captain Paul. That is my co-host, Fajardo1BW.
Hey.
How's it going there, brother?
Good. You know, surviving another day.
Still live and still vertical. So, thus far out of free agency, Fajardo, what has been the most interesting thing you've seen today?
The Johnny Goudro signing was definitely one that caught a lot of people off guard. It was, how do you say, nobody thought he was going to leave, just like that. You know, they thought he might get traded or something like that. But they definitely didn't think he was just going to say, nah, I'm okay, I don't want your contract, I'm going to go somewhere else for what appeared to be less money. You know, one of those things. We'll get into that later when we break it down a little bit more for people. Yeah.
So, I would have to say Johnny Goudreau is definitely one up there for me as well. It was kind of shocking with the way things broke and how things happened. Yeah, that would definitely, for me, that was the biggest shocker out of the whole thing. Because not even did he not go back to Calgary. He didn't go to New Jersey or, you know, even the Flyers. Like, he went to Columbus, which I think is... Which is great, though, I think, for that franchise, personally, because you've seen so many big names leave that team. So I think it's actually pretty cool to see, personally. But let's get into the cap breakdown of each team, because it is actually pretty surprising how this cap breakdown is going to work. And let me add it right here. So we're going to use our favorite here on the show, capfriendly.com. Kind of gives you a breakdown and kind of gives you an indication of what teams are going to make certain moves. Like, obviously, if you're above the cap, you can't really add players. But if you're below the cap, you can. Now, mind you, Florida just had that massive trade. We'll go later into the video as well. But you got Tampa, Washington, Florida, the Oilers, the Canucks, Maple Leafs, Golden Knights, Columbus themselves now, Pittsburgh and Philly, all above the projected cap hit. I would have to say the Canucks, probably from the Toronto Maple Leafs on down. Like, you can shave, like, you know, Flyers need to shave $98,000. That you can shave that pretty easily. Anything under $1 million, you can just move a player if needed. But yeah, because especially with Columbus is actually over a player, so somebody they're going to be cutting is at the min. But you got barely any cap space in Montreal with $248,000 available. St. Louis only $625,000, and then you get a little bit more space with the Kings with 1.5. You know, $2 million, and then, you know, probably from Colorado Avalanche on down, you have the realistic expectations. You could actually upgrade here with like 3.9 mil. You can add another, you know, solid player. I think that's one of the reasons why Kadri hasn't signed yet. I don't think he'll sign for 3.9 personally, but you never know. And then at the bottom, in red right here, these are teams that are so freaking cheap, they haven't even spent to the cap floor yet. So in the NHL, you need to spend at least $60 million on your roster because they want to have some level of competition. They don't want owners just having $20 million teams out there and hoping for the best. Like, no, you need to spend some money, get some talent on your roster so it's a watchable product. Most NHL fans know about the cap floor, but some do not. And, you know, quite frankly, it will be kind of interesting to see how Arizona and the Ducks do, like what they do, who they sign. Because, you know, you'd add a few nice pieces over there. And one of the only teams that I see that looks very appetizing towards like the 10 mil range, I mean, I think Detroit has a bright future. I think Ottawa has a very bright future.
Yeah, they did their thing.
And I think Buffalo, surprisingly, they almost have $20 million cap space. With certain moves, I actually could see Buffalo developing in a couple years from now into a solid playoff contender. So for Fajardo, so what you've seen, gone through this list, don't want to keep going through every number. What do you kind of make of this whole cap space situation? And do you think any of these lower end teams could add and maybe improve? And what higher end teams do you think are going to be hurt because they're going to have to cut some players?
Well, let me start off with some of those teams that you just mentioned at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And let's start off with, like, you already spoke about Buffalo. They have some nice pieces, right, that they can build on. But let's look at a team like the Islanders, who are kind of like in that middle range where they have some aged talent. They have some young talent that's now getting into their prime, right? They can turn around and, maybe make some moves during the season. I don't think they're going to really do anything mind-blowing before the season starts. But along with their cap, you also got to remember they have a new arena that they're also working into, and all those financials are probably playing a factor in what they're trying to do. They're a team to watch and see what they do. I don't think they're going to do anything, like, again, drastic that's going to make them a playoff contender right off the bat. But I think that they're going to be one of those teams to look out for, to start making some moves, maybe get some draft picks that's going to help them out in the near future, or maybe even go and maybe trade a veteran that might be hot early in the season, and then go after someone who maybe they can develop into something within the next 2 to 3 seasons. Like you said, Ottawa has made quite a few good free agency pickups. They're looking very appetizing as well. Dallas, I looked at some articles, and Dallas has one of the biggest wasted contracts, is what they said, when it comes to Tyler Seguin. But they do have some cap space to make some moves, whatnot. With the pieces they have, maybe 2 or 3 key players, and they can actually become a team that can go further in the playoffs. Because I think that they're good enough to make the playoffs right now. I don't think they're good enough to make a dent in anything. So maybe 1 or 2 acquisitions. They have some cap space. Maybe take the cap off of one of the teams on the top that have too much. Maybe 1 or 2 solid pieces, and maybe it turns out a little bit better for them this season.
Yeah, I would actually have to say, out of the teams you mentioned, I think the one that actually has the most, besides Ottawa, I actually think the Islanders have the greatest chance to make it to the playoffs out of these guys down below. Because, Sorokin's a stud in net. Yeah. I mean, I think it's forgotten how good this guy was last year, because the numbers he put up were quite frankly insane. Yeah. And you have pieces there. You have Barzell, you have Lee, you have Nelson, you have Bailey, you have Palmieri. You have some pieces over there up front. Zach Parise, kind of washed at this point in career, but when healthy can be okay. The back end, I think, with the addition of Alexander Romanov, I think he's a solid young 22-year-old defenseman. Do I think he's ever going to be a Norris candidate? Probably not, but I think he could be a top 4 defenseman very easily. You got Pelech, you got Pulak, and I think very competent defenders, but I think you got Varlamov back now on the aisle, and then you got Sorokin. I mean, I kind of like that tandem. I like what I see. I think you just need their top players to produce how they should produce. And maybe they can add a piece or here that, in the free agents, that will, not necessarily put them over the top, but add a little bit more depth scoring. Because it is shocking. The Islanders had the biggest fall out of any NHL team this past season. Nobody was expecting them to fall off that hard. Yeah. And then, in typical New York fashion, the bandwagons moved for the Islanders to the Rangers when they went to the playoffs. So,
yeah, a lot of them did do it. I watched it happen. I saw people just dropping their Islander hat, pulling out a Ranger hat, and just putting it on like they've been following the Rangers forever. Negative. Sorry. No credit here.
So, I think that's the team with the most promise outside Ottawa.
Yeah. Like I said, they have a lot of their forward core is on the older end. They have a few young guys, but for the most part, they're older. And these are the guys that are going to be, like I was saying before, tradable pieces, because they're probably going to get hot. You look at Cizikas, he tends to get hot pretty early. He fades later on, but if you trade him when he's hot, maybe it's something, you could get something good in return. Maybe a couple of young guys that can develop over the next couple of years. You take a look at someone like maybe even a Josh Bailey. Yeah, he's an assistant captain, but let's face it, he's 32. You don't know what you're gonna get for him, over the next couple of years. He has a pretty hefty fee on him, $5 million per season.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of him, maybe get one guy that's like $3 million, another guy that might be like 2, so you may get 2 players for what you were getting for just Josh Bailey, and maybe guys that you can develop. Something like this. This is one of those teams that is technically in a great spot. Not a playoff contender, not where they're gonna go deep and win the whole thing, but one of those teams that you have pieces you can move, and you have that solid decor. They're not over the edge. They're right at their prime. Nobody's over 30. They're close. They're anywhere from 22 to 30, so to 29. So like the defensive core is in a good place. Like you said, the goaltending tandem is there. And again, some of these older guys, they definitely have some of these older forwards that, again, can get hot. You can trade them when they're hot and get something good in return. You'd have to keep an eye on this team. And they can surprise people because they have that nitty-gritty. They've always had that nitty-gritty. Being a Rangers fan, I've seen it. So I wouldn't expect a great playoff run or anything like that, but I do expect them to make some changes throughout the season and step their game up, for the future.
Yeah, I think the big thing with the Isles is that they just got to draft well, and hopefully this last draft kind of pans out for them. Mm-hmm. Because they do have, up front they're older, they're averaging 29, back end younger, averaging 25. And I think once Zach Parise, this is last year on contract for the Islanders, I think if you remove him, I mean, not to bash him, but you got to move off him, and you got to let the youth movement, you got to add some more youth inject into this lineup. But they have a very good key pieces, and quite frankly, my favorite part of their team is their goaltending situation. I think Sorokin is in the discussion being towards top end league for goaltenders. Just this last season, statistically alone, proved that. Off the top of my head, I believe he was in top 5 for save percentage and stuff of that ilk, because he just was absolutely dominant. This past season, Sorokin had a .925 save percentage and a 2.40 goals against, and a team that missed the playoffs. Correct?
Yeah.
52 games started, 26 wins, 18 losses, and 8 over. He carried that team. You get him a backup that can just, hold water, you're looking at a playoff team. And the way, I think both New York teams did it extremely well. They have 2 young goaltenders that they can build with the future. Sorokin, 26-year-old. I forget how old Shesterkin is off the top of my head. But, relatively young goaltenders that can 26. Lead their franchise. He's 26 as well?
Yeah, he's 26.
So,
he's 1 year younger than Vasilevsky.
Okay. So you have very young goaltenders leading the way. So, but I think that's kind of enough about the Isles. We've kind of covered them quite a bit. I think for us, the next big move we would have to talk about is how do you feel about Ottawa in their offseason this far? Whew. Because it's been kind of wild.
Ottawa, wow. I got to give them a clap. I think that as far as the free agency, bargaining and picking up players and everything, I think they're winning. I think that they've made quite a few pickups. Signing some good older players that still have something left in the tank, like a Giroux, right? That was a surprise to a lot of people, but it was also, hey, let's face it, he's getting towards the tail end of his career. Why not go and play at home, in front of your family and all this stuff, whatnot. It's a good pickup for them, market-wise, and also, putting up points. He fits all the way around. Who else did they get? They signed
DeBrincat. They got Alex DeBrincat in a trade. They did a lot of things.
That was a steal. I'm sorry.
Absolute steal.
They completely robbed Chicago. Chicago should be calling the cops. and Interpol and going across the border to get something back because they got robbed in that one, right?
And they also improved their goaltending situation by acquiring somebody like Cam Talbot. And it's funny, right? Because Minnesota goes with the older option of Marc-Andre Fleury. And I can understand it to a degree because they're looking to win now. But, Cam Talbot, I'm not saying he's spring chicken. He's 35.
Yep.
So maybe they're going to go with a youth backup that can learn from Fleury. But I was kind of surprised with that because Cam Talbot kind of carried them to that playoffs and did very well, especially before the injury. And kind of got that job taken away from him from Fleury. But I like Cam Talbot, Anton Forsberg tandem. They're just a very, very young team. You got Brady Tkachuk, Joshua Norris. You got Claude Giroux, you got Alex DeBrincat, you got Batherson, you have Tim Stutzela. I mean, you have a good, the average age of the forwards up front is only 24 points, so 25 years old.
Yeah.
The old man on that roster is Claude Giroux up front, and then Nick Holden on the back end.
Yes. So I think that was a good addition to their back end. You want to add a little bit of veteran leadership, guy who's kind of been through the ringer. He's been on quite a few teams. He was on the Rangers. He was on the Avalanche. So he's been around. He kind of understands the game. The fact that he's 35, playing defense, and he doesn't just play, a fancy game. He's a grinder, right? He's a stay-at-home grinding defenseman. So he's actually going to bring, I think, a little bit more of that stand up at the blue line. Hey, you're not really going to mess with us kind of attitude. He looks like he's not that type of player. But I've seen him in person, and he's gonna bring that a little bit of an edge to that. He'll hit somebody any day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most promising part of this whole situation for me is you're really seeing the maturation process of somebody like a Tim Stutzela. Last season, you saw him in 79 games get 58 points, 22 goals, 36 assists. So obviously more of a setup guy, but he improved off his 29 points in his rookie season. 58 points in the next season. So I'm looking for Stutzela to even take that next step forward. And I think with this talent up front, I could also see them in a playoff situation. They might be young. They might not be a lot of cap used in that team. But they've got the talent. Like Joshua Norris is also somebody that is developed into a very good player. Yeah. I don't think people foresaw him coming what he has become. And Joshua Norris he has absolutely done a fantastic job of developing and getting to that next level. So it'll be interesting to see with a guy like Giroux. I mean, does Giroux play center? Does he play the wing? I mean, there's so much promise there for me. It's got to be exciting, at least for Ottawa Senators fan, that this team has been through so many different rebuilds and teardowns and just even the threat of being moved. I feel good for Senators fans to finally have something to be excited for.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with you on that one. I mean, again, all these moves. I mean, the Brinkcat caught a lot of people off guard. Because again, it was a steal, 100% a steal. What they gave up was nothing compared to what they're getting back. You have a guy who's been proving himself. I think he just came off his best season, and he's only 24. You know what I mean? So there's so much more. He still has 3 more years in his contract. It's not a super huge contract. It's not a Brady Tkachuk contract where it's $8 million.
No.
It's 6.5. I think he's worth the 6.5. He's actually worth more than that. He probably does deserve Brady money, but
he probably took a hometown discount, honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, I mean, definitely something to be excited for Ottawa. And man, kudos to you guys for making all these steps now. So.
Yeah, you got to give something for the fans to get excited for. So, especially with the passing of the owner, which was sad to hear about. It's good to see that them kind of take this next step and kind of be a very productive team. And it's gonna. I hope they make the playoffs this season. I think they're going to be very good.
Yep.
Now, speaking of the polar opposite of very good, what in the hell is Chicago doing? I mean, honestly. At this point, it's it's confusing to see what Chicago's doing here because, quite frankly, with all the controversy around them and all the accusations, and it's not looking good to be a Blackhawks fan right now.
No, it's one of those situations where they wanna rebuild again, right? And I say again because some of the star players that they had when they initially did a rebuild, right, like a Jonathan Taves, a Patrick Kane, these guys were there when they did the rebuild. Obviously, it worked. They got 3 championships.
Yep.
3 championships and whatnot. Now they're coming towards the tail end of their career, and let's face it, if you look at their roster, it's a rebuild roster. It almost it almost looks like the Seattle Kraken's draft pick out of the teams when they were just building a team. Period.
Yep.
so it's difficult to see this because you have a Taves and a Kane at the end of their careers, basically, and now you're telling them, hey, we're pretty much rebuilding. We hope you can stick around. We can't guarantee anything. You may not have a good team. You may have a solid team. That's about the best we can do at this moment. But, where do you go? You're a Chicago's fan. You're used to winning. You've had a really good team. Yeah, the past, I think, 2 seasons, they've struggled mightily with the injuries that Taves has had. But outside of that, Kane has been producing, and they weren't horrific. They were bad in record, but they weren't. You could always sit down and watch a Blackhawks game and still say, okay, cool, they're contending. But with the team they have now, it's one of those like, hey, these are the guys left over. Do you want them? Okay, take them. No offense. I mean,
it is
to those guys.
The most baffling move out of all this was to me, right? You move Alex DeBrincat, young in his 20s, right? You move him before Patrick Kane or Taves? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Because Alex DeBrincat's the guy you want around during the rebuild, so there's some promise on the back end, so you can kind of hit and still be relatively competitive. Instead, they get rid of their youngest goal scorer, who's had two 40-goal seasons. I mean, like, if I'm a Blackhawks fan, I'm like, what are we doing here? And even their draft, some of the people they drafted this past year was kind of like, that was kind of a head-scratcher.
Yeah.
Like, Patrick Kane is 33. Jonathan Taves is 34. Both making $10.5 a year. Kane is the only one I could justify makes that salary worth it. The only one. Taves has seen a downward trend. I think he'd probably be a $3 to maybe a $4 million center in today's market. I don't think he's anywhere near that 10.5 in cap production. But like, you have Tyler Johnson, you have Anthony Seo, like, you have Max Domi. Like, to me, this roster looks like a bunch of cast-offs from other teams that were like okay to like average players. On defense, the defense looks really rough. Like, really rough. Like, you got Seth Jones, who I think is a little overrated at 9.5. McCabe's an okay player, in my opinion. Stillman, okay. Vlasic, I mean, young. And then you got Caleb Jones, who's currently an RFA, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, they still need to pick up another defenseman.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to pick up? You know what I mean? Like, who'd want to really play for you? Who's going to be a difference maker? You got nothing right now.
I mean, you do have nothing. And then like, the goaltending situation gets worse. It's like, you have Peter Mrazek, who can't stay healthy and has been vastly overrated. And then you have Alex Stalock, who's like, he's an okay backup, but like, there's nothing here that would make Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves want to stay. And so this is the other question I'll ask before I go into the next subject. Do you believe Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, do you think they both stay in Chicago till the end of the season? Do you think one of them moves? Do you think both of them move? What is your prediction regarding that?
I'd be surprised if both of them stay. I expect both of them to get moved at a certain point. And that's when you start looking at those teams that we discussed earlier with the deep pockets, right? Where can they move? Those contracts are hefty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are 10.5. no team is going to be able to take both of those contracts. So when they get moved, they're going to be moved on an individual basis. It's not going to be as a duo.
Yeah. No.
You know what I mean?
No,
like
no one has 21 million in cap
I mean, unless they're going to Arizona to carry the whole team by themselves.
Let's go.
You know,
in front of 5,000 fans. Are you excited?
Right? or go to Anaheim. Anaheim has that in loads, right? So those are their two options. Let's go to Anaheim or let's go to Arizona where they're completely rebuilding because they have nobody.
They don't even have a stadium, like fucking Christ.
You know what I mean? Like, unless they're going to something like that, like, they're gonna have to be split up. There's been a lot of talks, a lot of people. Obviously, I'm in New York. I hear a lot of things. A lot of people have been talking about Patrick Kane going to the Rangers. I don't see it. I don't think we have the pocket for that right now or anything like that. And because he's been the most consistent point producer out of the two, right? He's gonna validate that 10.5. So who are you gonna give up? That's gonna make them say, "Oh, yeah, we'll take that." Like, I could see the Rangers only taking Patrick Kane if they give up like maybe a Kaku and like 2 draft picks for the next 3 seasons.
I mean, listen, after that terrible trade for DeBrincat, like maybe the Rangers, all they need to do is offer like a hand sandwich and a fucking 7th round pick, and they can get him. But yeah, no, it makes sense. I don't think the cap makes sense necessarily in New York as well. I don't know if you want to sink. I do think Patrick Kane would be nasty. Like, the only thing is if like Chicago retains some of his salary, and I think that's what they're going to have to do in some of these deals is retain some of the salary.
100%.
Because this is literally the last year of the deal. It's the only way I see it works. But yeah, it's a pretty sad state to be a Chicago Blackhawks fan right now.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago retaining, I'd say that on the Patrick Kane, they're going to end up retaining $2 million. And for Jonathan Taves, I will call out that they're going to retain at least $4 million to $5 million, because again, like you said, his numbers don't justify even close to what he's getting paid. He's a $4 to $5 million player at this point in his career. Especially with the injuries and everything coming back, right? We got to see if he's going to produce. We don't know, and it's one of those situations like, where do we go? Like he's not going to be a first line center. Wherever he goes, he's going to be a third liner, and maybe a second line fill-in. That's it. It's just not there right now. No,
it's just not. And it should be very interesting to see how these things go, quite frankly. Let's go into the next one. The biggest move, I feel like, of the offseason was the Johnny Goudreau. So let's head over to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And they are currently $958,000 over the cap. Mm-hmm. So they did end up re-signing, which we actually made a video, or we had a conversation, I say at this point because we didn't release it, about Patrick Laine maybe not signing there. But Patrick Laine re-signed in Columbus. Yep. You got Patrick Laine, you got Johnny Goudreau, you got Jacob Forsythe, you got Nyquist, you got also you got some nice pieces there. So that being said, with Johnny Hockey, did you think there was inherently anything wrong with how he handled leaving Calgary?
I don't, in a personal stand, absolutely not. You look at the numbers, you do your validation as far as like what you're actually getting, and what you want to do as improving your life or so on and so forth, what's best for your family. If you look at everything, right, let's be honest, he won. It may seem like he's getting less money, but due to the taxes and everything imposed in Canada, he actually would have gotten less money, even though the overall big number looks so nice, right? What was it? What was the initial quantity that Calgary offered him?
I think it was $84 million, if off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly.
For 7 seasons?
Yep.
And he got, right, and then he got offered 60, what did he sign for? 60-something mil?
64, I think it was
64 million, right?
Let me double check that while you talk.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, due to the taxes and everything, he was actually going to make less in the long run for an extra year playing in Calgary than if he would have Well, instead of doing what he did.
So it was 8 years, $84 million from Calgary, and then he signed a 7-year for $68.25 million in Columbus.
Right, and he's getting more money.
So I double checked some of that math, and I followed up on it. Yeah, he actually on average per year will actually make a little bit more in Columbus. So from what the statistics of the federal and the state level, how much they tax you, and that's actually why a lot of hockey players like playing down in Florida and Tampa Bay. Is there's no state tax, so you see more of your money. But, I mean, do you think he could have handled it in a better fashion? Do you think he should have, told the fans he wasn't going to re-sign? Or do you believe what he said in the Players Tribune where it really was a last-second thing? Because, to me, that's a big decision. I don't know if I just make a split-hair decision, fuck it, just send it, I'm going to Columbus.
I think that Columbus may have had that offer on the table for him prior to him making his decision by a long shot. Mm-hmm. I think he was really waiting to see if Calgary would do something to match that same dollar value. Mm-hmm. And I just think that maybe they just fell short. They couldn't do it. And again, it's not even the team's fault or his fault. It's just the taxes that Canada places on you. It takes up so much of your money. You almost lose half of your money to play in Canada. And I think that was a determining factor. It was just hey, Calgary, listen, I can make a little bit more money down here. Can you do this? Can you match this? And at the end of the day, I don't think they could. And I think that's when he said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have to go with that. The money is going to play a fact. Thank you for everything and whatnot. I have to go. And how do he handle it with the fans? I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't matter what he would have done. The fact that he was leaving is going to make the fans upset. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, I think, regardless what he did, they were going to be upset. I will say this is a whole different conversation. I think with the restrictions that Canada has in place with travel and COVID restrictions and vaccinations and stuff of that ilk, that made it very difficult for Johnny because Johnny had people in his family that weren't comfortable taking the vaccine and couldn't come up and watch the kids and stuff like that. It just made it very difficult. So I understand why Johnny wanted to come live in the States. He's from here. Wants to come stateside, be a little bit closer, a little bit less restrictions. It's one of the biggest difficulties as a Canada hockey team is that, quite frankly, you have a lot of disadvantages compared to down south in the United States. A lot more restrictions, a lot more taxes. I mean, it takes a very special player to want to just deal with some of that BS from the Canadian side of the border and still want to stay. I mean, you saw Petrie from the Canadians, who was a very good player, very good defense for him. He asked for to get traded, not because he didn't like the team or the management. He just said the restrictions and all that nature just was very difficult to deal with, and he got sent down south to a United States team. I believe it was Nashville. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with the restrictions in Canada. How many more people get alienated, and they're well, I'm not going to go deal with that bullshit. I'm going to go, I'll go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And let's, getting back to the Johnny Goudreau, let's kind of break down his season by season, right? I watched Johnny when he played for Boston College, phenomenal hockey player in the NCAA. Mm-hmm. So, 2013, 2014, 1 game played, 1 goal. Now that is a way to start a career. 1 point. +1, 100 shooting percentage. My man didn't even need to take a second shot. He's like, I'm good. Second season, 80 games played, 24. Well, this is more of his first season now I think about it, but 80 games played his rookie season, 24 goals, 40 assists for 64 points. In your rookie season, that is phenomenal. Yep. That is a really good season. The next season, he puts up almost a point per game. 79 games played, 30 goals, 48 assists for 78 points. Season after that, 72 games played, 18 goals, 43 assists, 61 points. Season after that, he was more than a point per game. 80 games played, 24 goals, 60 assists for 84 points. And then 2018 2019 season, this was the season I think was his first breakout. It was 82 games played,
played the whole season, 36 goals, 63 assists for 99 points. Like, that is a phenomenal season. Next season, he kind of a little back down to earth. 7 games played, 18 goals, 40 assists for 58 points. Still a very good season considering, but, step back from his usual production. The COVID shortened season, 56 games, 19 goals, 30 assists, 49 points. Phenomenal season as well. Last year was his best season to date. 40 goals, so in 82 games, 40 goals, 75 assists for 115 points. We're a plus 64.
Yes,
now,
sir.
One of the biggest knocks about Johnny Hockey coming into the NHL was that due to his size, durability would be a problem. But if you look at these seasons, and I'm not obviously the COVID when he played all of them, so he has virtually played 70 games or plus in every season, excluding the COVID shortened season where he played all of them regardless. So he has been extremely durable. He's been extremely reliable. And what's, one of the best attributes to have is availability. He is always available to his team. So that's definitely what I like to see, because for a player that is reportedly 5'9", 165 pounds,
Yeah.
his durability is impressive.
Yeah.
So
100%. I mean, yeah, you watch a guy play, you're always scared for your life because you're like, he's so small. He's so small. Someone hits him hard, but he takes those hits and he keeps on going. I mean, and again, he's in the prime of his career, right? He's 28 years old. He's pretty much figured out what he can do best, how to move, obviously how to shoot, how to pass. He's doing some really big things. Well, he did some big things in this last one. And now he ends up on a team that is pretty well set as well. They're really young up front. Their oldest player, I think, is 30. They have 2 players at 32 as a forward. Those are their oldest players. All the other guys are mid-20s or reaching the late 20s, which he is, right? But that's it. You look at the defensive core, another young batch. One player at 30. Everybody else is literally 28 and less. Actually, you can pretty much say 26 and less, because it's only the 28-year-old and the 30. Those are the old guys, and they're not even that old. You know what I'm saying? You look at the goaltending tandem. I mean, pretty solid. It's pretty solid for their game.
I think that's their weakest part.
Yeah, that is their weakest.
Corpus. It's hard. Okay. It's hard to judge this. That goalie group had, when that tragic passing happened with that fireworks incident, I can't blame them mentally not being right. When you see a very close friend of you dying in front of you, mentally that's going to mess you up. So I'm going to put last season out the window. Hopefully, obviously prayers to the family, the tragic loss and the friends. It's just it's heartbreaking. So I'm hoping they can bounce back. But that is my biggest worry with this team, is the goaltending. Can they bounce back? I think there is talent there in net to bounce back, but will they be able to is going to be the one thing. But the funny part is, right, a guy like Patrick Laine, right, who just re-signed up for $8.7 million. I mean, Patrick Laine is only 24 years old. That's the crazy thing. He's been around for so long, you kind of forget how young he is.
Yeah.
But Patrick Laine is a very, very young hockey player. Let's just go right into it. He's one of the more productive players in the league. All right, 24 years old, 6'5", 216 pounds, so a big boy. I mean,
you look at him though; he looks like he's 30-something. Let's be honest. Look at his face.
Yeah, he does.
My man looks like he's 37. Just saying.
So he went to Winnipeg, and I think he performed well in Winnipeg. I think some of the flack he got from the fans was a little. I think he was young and he needed to grow up. But I think some of the flack he would get, he had a 40-goal season. His rookie year, he had 36 goals. He was relatively productive. In Columbus, his first year, he struggled a bit. But last year, he was a point-per-game player with 26 goals, 30 assists for 56 points. So 56 points in 56 games, that's pretty solid. The one thing the one thing that bothers me with Patrick Laine, and I will completely admit this, he has all the talent in the world, and I think he has a world-class shot. He has gone on interviews saying that he wants to be a more well-rounded player, which I respect. But I feel like also he should go into his best asset, and that's his shot. I mean, he is developing as a playmaker, and I think that's overall good for his game. But I would like Patrick Laine to shoot the puck more because he has the shot. He really does have the shot. I think you could be looking at a consistent 30, 40 goal scorer in a full season with Patrick Laine. And, I mean, that would be my only harsh criticism. But, like, getting back to the youth, like, everyone's relatively young on this team. You have some talent. I mean, I don't think they're good enough right now to be a playoff team, but they could be a fringe team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, free agents, I mean, there's some decent free agents out there that they can sign as far as goalies go. You know, you have, let me take a look real quick. You have, like, some experience with a Braden Holtby. You know, who else is out there?
Let me go. I'm gonna go right now into it.
Yep. You just got to make the adjustment a little bit higher. I think it's on the second. Go up a little bit more. Right there where you see player filters. Go to positions. Go to goalies.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. There we go.
Yep. And then apply right there. Update results.
So,
you know, I mean, you look at a Braden Holtby, you have a bunch of no-namers, but, you know, some guys you've seen here or there.
Yeah, like you got Holtby, like I did games played. Like you got Holtby, you got Hammond, you got Berube, you got Sparks, you got Schneider's an AHL goalie at this point in his career.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think Holtby's done, isn't he?
I think he's done, but nobody's sure. You know, it's one of those things. I think, given the right situation, you give him a team like this, right, which kind of resembles like the way that they play, kind of resembles like the old Caps. Nitty gritty, good talent, rough guys, big guys, outside of Goudro, obviously. You know, that can put the puck in the net. The defenders are pretty solid. You know, he could be a difference maker, Holtby, you know, if he were to sign on there. But outside of that, I mean, again, it's one of those things that they can still fix. You know, yeah, they're over the cap, but they also have way too many forwards signed up on their main roster currently. I'm pretty sure that will change. They have, I think they're like 3 players over on their forward side. So, I mean, once they get rid of those, they may have like an extra mil, maybe 2.
I think that they can easily dump that cap. Like if I was them, I would probably try to move off Voracek. That's just my opinion, but that's a high contract to move. But like Sean Corrali at 2.5, that's maybe a little bit rich. You can move him, but I mean, like Holtby had a bounce back year, which is unfortunate. He got like that injury, so he was actually looking good in Dallas. But like I think for, you know, kind of wrapping this up with the whole Johnny Goudreau thing, I don't blame him for leaving. I think he's got to do what's best for his family and you know what's best for him overall. Yep. So no hate on my end for this for it all. So we're gonna
kudos.
Go ahead.
Kudos to Goudreau. I think it was a wise decision. I think that it shouldn't tarnish his legacy whatsoever. I think, if anything, it puts a fire behind him, and he's probably going to say, I have something to prove now, just like he did when he first got to Calgary, and, you know, it's going to give him that spark, that little edge, and he's going to really go hard.
So, this is a team that we're going to kind of have to talk about because, you know, we all know it's a big market. The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Woof.
Currently over the cap for like essentially 1.5 million. They're going to have to kill in cap somewhere. This is the team that has all the money in the world, all the cap space in the world, but they always choke. Always choke. And you have 3 players making over 10 mil. That Tavares contract they're going to regret. Even though I think Tavares is still producing well. Is he that guy anymore? No.
Not 11 mil.
No. But you have Austin Matthews, Tavares, you have Marner making over 10 mil. You have William Nylander making almost 7. You have Kerfoot making 3.5. And the crazy thing You have Riley Morgan making $7.5 million. Is he really a number one defenseman? Maybe. I think he's more of a 2. Rasker rating is a 1. I think Jake Muzzin's 5.5. If he's making that, like TJ Brody played well. Justin Hall making $2 million. Okay. Lindgren 1.4. Maybe he can make that next step. I think Giordano played very well for them, and he took a team friendly deal to sign up on them. But their goaltending tandem is still, it's absolute dog shit. Matt Murray and Samsonov. Like I would say this. I would be fine of having one of these goalies in a tandem in the backup role, right? Yep. One of them, because then like you're rolling the dice. But having two guys where you're rolling the dice and like hope for the best, little interesting. And I think with the way how Toronto constructs their roster is absolutely dumb. I mean, Austin Matthews is a world-class player. Mitch Marner, I would say, is a world-class player. I think John Tavares is a very good player still. You can't have three $10 million guys. You just can't. And, like, this would be a very hard contract to move. But if they were somehow able to move Tavares so they could spend money elsewhere, I think this team would be far better off. I think they got so obsessed with the offensive talent, they forgot that there's other parts of the team that need to be filled. I mean, you have Riley Morgan, who's is a solid guy. Muzzin solid. Brody solid. But, Hall, he makes mistakes his own end. Liljegren, he's okay. Giordano, he's good, but he's getting older. He's getting gray in the beard. And then you got Sandin, who's like, okay. Like, I think you could add a couple nice players instead of having to do retreads. Like, Alexander Kerfoot's done pretty well for them. But, like, for example, the Wayne Simmons signing, like the Joey Anderson signing, like Gaudet, like there's guys here that they just sign as, like, scraps from other teams because they have no other cap space. Nothing to play with. And I think the Toronto Maple Leafs is a team that's, like, a perfect example that just because you have the money to spend it doesn't mean you should. Like
100%. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you look at their defensive core. I mean, let's face it. They from the teams we've looked at, they're one of the older defensive cores.
Yep.
That's definitely something you don't want, right? Because it'd be nice if it was, spread out with like some experience, some youth, and stuff like that. But when you have 3 out of 7 defensemen that are in their 20s, 2 of them in their early 20s, one of them is 28, and then everybody else is like 30 and up, and they're not bona fide, like really good. They're not considered in their prime technically. Like, yeah, you're messing up here. Those are guys that you're signing, or you have signed for some time now. That I think at this point you look to move them. You build them up a little bit during the season because let's face it, Toronto is a good team, right? Overall,
they're a good regular season team,
right? Well, that's what I'm getting at, right? During the season, they're going to be a good team. You're going to be able to move a lot of these guys. You look like a Clifford. Clifford, he's a forward, 31, right? He's got a Stanley Cup under his belt. I think he may have 2 with LA, right? You look at him, bottom line, $762,000. That's all you have. You trade him off, right? You may get a younger piece. Defenseman-wise, you take some of the older guys like a Brody or something, put them somewhere where they're going to be in use at this point. You don't have the team that can pass that threshold. And you've proven it for 2 seasons in a row where you've been expected to win your series and you were ahead by a good amount.
Joking, sorry.
And you're lucky someone did the Heimlich maneuver. Don't sue me, Heimlich. I'm not paying that fee, whatever. But, yeah, someone did an abdominal thrust, right? Because you can't say Heimlich anymore, just to let you know. That's like a whole thing.
What?
Right? Yeah, you can't say Heimlich because the family sued.
What?
The Heimlich family sued. They sued so that way if anyone ever taught CPR, with the name Heimlich as a Heimlich maneuver, which is the abdominal thrust, right? They want money for that. So that's
What?
why if you look
What?
at all CPR training and everything now, they call it the abdominal thrust. It's because
Yo.
they're not going to pay the Heimlich family money just to have the Heimlich name on their paperwork.
Whoa,
Yeah.
wait. Listen, I know this is a hockey podcast. I gotta say this because I that is wild to me. I didn't even notice that. So I thought it was just not like woke enough to say Heimlich anymore. So I thought it was something offensive, and that's why in all these trainings they never said it anymore.
No.
That is hysterical. You would like, I don't know, to me, like, that's a life-saving thing to do. Why wouldn't you want your name associated with that so you go down the history books? But that's a whole that's whatever.
And just so you know, Mr. Heimlich himself only did the Heimlich maneuver for the first time, I think, while he's in a nursing home. Just so you know.
That's crazy.
But let's go ahead. Yeah.
Let's get back into hockey instead of medical news.
So like I said, good team season-wise, regular season-wise, but I say take that, start off strong, make a couple of trades where you can carry some of the maybe some young blood, because again, on the defensive end you're getting old, right? Maybe get
Really
some defensemen that are like 24, 25, that are decent and you can build on. As far as like the forwards, hey, you may have to trade off two pieces. Maybe get rid of one of those big names. I'm sorry, I would get rid of John Tavares. Obviously,
Absolutely.
he's an old piece. You're gonna have to retain some of that cap hit. Nobody's going to take him at 11 mil. He's maybe a 6-7 mil player at this moment because he's still producing at a pretty high level compared to some of the other centers in the league. So if they do trade him off, I expect them to retain like 3 to 4 mil. But get rid of him and, get somebody else in the mix.
I mean, let's kind of break it down, right, with John Tavares, because we're talking about him, and I think at times he's only 31 years old. That's still relatively young in the NHL. I mean, like, you're a vet at this point, but if you take care of your body, you could go until you're 37, 38, right? Like that's not crazy. And if you're really efficient, you can stay until your 40s, just like Jaromir Jagr. But for a guy that got much maligned by the Toronto Maple Leaf fan base, he was the only one, in my opinion, that really showed up in the playoffs. I mean, I'm not saying he lit up the whole world, but 3 goals, 3 assists in 7 games, 6 points isn't a bad production, especially in playoffs where it gets harder to score. This past season, he had 79 games played, 27 goals, 49 assists for 79 points with a -8. Now, the plus-minus for Tavares is career-wise, unfortunately, bad because he's been on some bad Islanders teams. But being on this Toronto team, that is a little bit troublesome. But, quite frankly, I mean, this man has always produced. He has always produced around a point-per-game clip. Really hasn't fallen off. In Toronto, he stayed about that. His first year in Toronto, 82 games played, 47 goals, 41 assists, 88 points. Second year in Toronto, 63 games played, 26 goals, 34 assists, 60 points. COVID shortened season, 56 games played, 19 goals, 31 assists, 50 points. And then last season, 79 games played, 27 goals, 49 points for plus 76. 76 points. I think Tavares still has value.
Yeah,
I do. I think Tavares. I think if Tavares was around 7 million, far easier to digest because he's still producing at around a point per game pace.
Yep.
Where I some of the hilarity to me with this team is a lot of fans just blame John Tavares. They think he's terrible. They think he's this. Where, I'm looking at other players to step up in the playoffs. I'm looking for other players to take notes and really kind of leave an impasse, like a lasting impact, and they're not showing up now. For a guy that I would say kind of stepped up this past season in the postseason for first time ever, Mitch Marner. He had 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points in 7 games played. Like, that's a good season. He had 97 points this past season. Like, Mitch Marner, to be fair to him, unless you disagree, I think he's kind of lived up somewhat to that contract.
I do.
He's always been over a point per game since his third season, and he's just a very, very solid player. But when do you say enough is enough? Like, that's the big question here. Even when these star players like Matthews, right? Let's look at Matthews real quick. Matthews produced. Apologize, it kind of just glitched. Matthews produced even with 9 points in that first round. 4 goals, 5 assists, and 7 games played for 9 points. And he had 106 points this past season. I mean, Matthews, you could argue, is going to go down as one of the better USA-born players of all time. Mm-hmm. But the problem with this team is there's just, outside of those few players and maybe Kerfoot, there's not enough production consistently.
Yep.
And defensively, outside of Morgan and Muzzin and Brody, I mean, Giordano played well, but can I expect a guy that's 38 years old to keep that production up? I'm kind of asking a lot. Like, Giordano on most teams should be a bottom 6 pairing. And I think Giordano could be on a cup-winning team right now if he was like the number 6 defenseman.
Yeah.
And that's not saying he's bad, but it's just saying he's no longer in his prime like he was with Calgary.
Yep.
I mean, he's 38 years old. He's a little long in the tooth at this point. Mm-hmm. And, with this goaltending tandem, I don't think Toronto's going to make the playoffs this season. I mean, I think there's talent up front, but if you have guys in net that can't stop a beach ball, it doesn't matter. Because if you're getting into shootouts, it doesn't really matter. Like, maybe they could prove me wrong. Maybe they could be like the Oilers, right? And just score. It doesn't matter who they have in net. Like, Koskinen could let in 10, and the Oilers still win by 11 goals. Maybe that happens. But I think the Edmonton Oilers offensively are far better than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep. And
let's be blunt, when the Edmonton Oilers faced a real team, they got their shit pushed in.
Yeah. Yep. They couldn't break the defense. When you have a solid defensive core, it's very difficult to beat a team like that, right? Mm-hmm. Colorado just stopped them. That's
destroyed them.
It wasn't even close. And you and I had a conversation about this before that series even happened, right? And what did we say? We said Edmonton could only beat Colorado if they show up defensively. Forget about the offense. If they show up defensively, they can win that series, right? Only if they showed up defensively. They couldn't show. They played decently, but when they grinded it out, at the end of the day, they got edged out defensively, and that's why they lost. They couldn't get past the other team's defense, whereas their defense broke.
Absolutely. I think that Colorado is just hands down one of the best teams in the whole NHL, and they want to win a cup to prove that. But the way they built that team was fantastic. And you know what? Final thoughts towards Toronto. I think that it's a solid up front roster, but goddamn, God bless you. You need a goaltender. Just are. It's not looking good for you. Yeah. Now, looking into a team that is good and is far better than Toronto.
And has cap space still.
The Colorado Avalanche. Now, the only piece missing right now is Kadri, to see if he's going to re-sign. Mm-hmm. And this might sound like blasphemy, but I think Kadri's a nice addition. Do I think they need him to repeat? Not necessarily. You got Mikko Rantanen, you got Landeskog, you got McKinnon. Now, how the fuck is McKinnon making 6.3? Wow. That's shocking to me, because if you really think about it, he's far better than pretty much a lot of players in the NHL. He's criminally underrated. He's making $6.3 million, and some of these $10 million players can't hold his jock.
Because they got him on the rise, not when he was on top.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They played it. Listen, let's face it. Let's face the facts. Sakic knew what he was doing. Sakic is a genius. He's one of those guys that's very cerebral. Even when he was a player, he was very cerebral on how he played the game, and he does the same thing. Him, another guy just like him, Chris Drury. They're both very cerebral guys, and the way that they're constructing their teams, should remind everybody on how they play the game. It's very cerebral. It's very, very tactical, and everything needs to go in particular positions. And he did a wonderful job to this point.
Yeah, I think Mikko Rantanen, you have Gabriel Landeskog, you have Nathan McKinnon, you have Valery Nichushkin, who didn't do well in Dallas, but he finally kind of blossomed in Colorado. He really developed into a nice player. Lehkonen, solid player as well. DJ Confer, Cogliano. Darren Helm, remember him back in Detroit days, you guy during those days. Darren Helm, always been a pretty solid player. Finally, he gets a cup there with Colorado. I mean, the thing I like about Colorado is their roster construction, because you have a couple good centers there, you have some good wing talent, and Joe Sakic just knows how to build. You can tell, he just knows how to build, because Colorado's been a top-end team. They just needed to learn how to finally become a champion. They kept and it takes time. And that's what, remember with Tampa Bay, people were like, oh, they fucking suck. They're not going to win. But lo and behold, you give teams chance to develop, chance to learn. And now it's looking very dangerous. Then you have Kel McCarr on the back end, signed for $9 million per year, and he's a stud though. He's a stud. At 20,
he's worth that $9 million.
He's easily worth that. You had Eric Johnson, who this was the last year of that contract, right? With 22-23. Yeah, this is last. This
upcoming season is the last year.
Let's see. Yep, sorry, Eric Johnson for $6 million, which at this point for a bottom two pairing, that's an overpay. But to be fair to him, he has leadership, and for what happened to him, with the whole family situation, if I believe that's correct. Yeah, this is the same Eric Johnson that the parents took all his money, correct?
I believe it is.
Yeah, so that that's great for him, because he got screwed. So it's good to see him make some money. Samuel Girard, pretty good. Josh Mason, he's a solid defender. Devin Taves, who I thought was a little underrated at times. I thought people overlooked him. He's a solid defender. They got some. You got Bowen Brenham, who's coming into his own. I like their decor. I really do. I really like their decor. I think there's with Cale Makar. Yeah, I mean, with Cale Makar too, as your number one, all you just need to get is competent defenders. Yep. And I think they have that. They have that elite number one defenseman. And now they can pair it. They have a 23-year-old locked up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years. Now, they're going to probably have to pay out their ass on the next contract as well. But, Cale Makar was electric in the NCAA. So I'm not completely surprised. The biggest change out of all of this on this team was the goaltending. Kemper not going back to Colorado. How much did that shock you?
I got to say, it was a shock, but there was hints, right? Because let's face it, right? He got injured, I believe, in the first round, and he was available towards the end of the second round, and they were like, "Oh, he should start and everything," and I'm pretty sure he felt that way as well, and they didn't start him. They kind of just left him there on the bench, and I know that as a player, right? You and I have both played hockey to a certain degree, right? And as a player, when you don't get that opportunity, or you get injured and you're coming back and you don't get the same opportunity that you had before, now you're kind of just like, well, are they looking over me? Are they done with me? Are they past me? And I'm pretty sure that played a little bit of a role in why he decided not to sign with them. And I'm pretty sure that they were over him anyway. I feel like they felt their backup couldn't hold his own the same, and they were looking for something different. They found Alexander Georgiev, who is no slouch. He's a very good goaltender. He's not a superstar, right? But he is a very good goaltender, especially when he plays consistently. And I think that they got a steal in that situation when they picked him up from the Rangers, because let's face it, Shesterkin is a superstar.
He's an elite superstar goalie.
An elite
Absolutely.
superstar, right? Georgiev is never going to play what he wants to play. He's never going to start unless some career-ending injury happens to Shesterkin, and I'm knocking on some wood that it never does.
They don't
right?
want that happen. Yeah.
He wasn't going to really see a starting position, just like any goaltender that came to New York, like a Cam Talbot, right? Who else? A Weeks when he first got there. Well, Weeks was starting, and then he got hurt, but he never saw starting ice again after Lundqvist took over. But any goaltender that came in while Lundqvist was there, they never got their fair shot at being a starter because you had a freakishly good elite superstar at in your net. That's what Henrik was, and now that's what Shesterkin is, right? So the whole thing is, are you willing to sit behind him knowing that you're never going to be the guy? You're going to be the guy behind the guy all the time. And Georgiev has made it very vocal, even before Shesterkin got there, that after Lundqvist, he wanted his shot. He wanted to be the guy. And when Shesterkin came in and he became the guy, I mean, it was a season transition, like half and half. Shesterkin seemed to prove that he had the brighter future, obviously. Yeah. Right? It was pretty easy for New York to make that decision. We're going to go with Shesterkin. And Georgiev sat behind the bench and said, you know what? I can't do this another year. I'm good with the trade. You know, and now he's getting an opportunity with Colorado. And the way they made the announcement, it looks like he may be the starter. And that's not a bad choice. You have a very good D-core in front of him. He is a very good goaltender, especially if you have good defense. In New York, he survived a building process with the defensemen, and once they were good, he had, I think, his best backup season behind Shesterkin this past season, you know, and imagine him starting. I think he'd be really good, and, you know, kudos to him. Kudos to Colorado for picking him up. I think they're going to be very happy. He has very strong work ethics, and now he has learned from two elite superstar goalies, both Lundqvist and Shesterkin. So I believe he has, you know, a chip on his shoulder. He's going to have something to prove, and he's, you know, learned from two of the greatest at this point.
So
Shesterkin to be proven.
So I think the thing I like about this deal is that you got younger, because Darcy Kempfer, and let's just go into it. Darcy Kempfer was also 32 years old, but Francouz stepped into the playoffs and did really well, like really, really well. Francouz's biggest thing sometimes would be his durability, but I think Francouz always kind of had that, like, you kind of thought there was some more in him, and he played well in the playoffs. Darcy Kempfer, he did solid, but it's hard, right? This is one of these teams. I don't think you need an elite goalie. It's one of the few teams. You have the D-core, you have the forwards that play a good system. I think that, who was the kid that went to Seattle and off of Colorado? What's his name?
Let me take a look at Seattle.
The goalie who literally left Colorado and went to from Seattle. I would have to kind of look real quick, but he went to Seattle, and mind you, Seattle wasn't a great team, but he didn't do the same. Didn't produce the same record. Grubauer.
Philip Grubauer.
Grubauer. So he went from Colorado, had a career year. We had a .922 save percentage on 1.95 goals against, and then, like, he dropped off. Now Seattle's not good, and it's kind of unfair for him to, you know, judge that. But Grubauer, who, you know, my opinion, in Washington was more of a career backup. Like, he's good in stints, but not good as your starter.
Right.
So, like, for me, like, Grubauer, that wasn't going to be a success unless Seattle built a really good team, and they didn't. But Darcy Kempfer, let's go into him. He leaves the Colorado organization, goes to Washington. Funny enough, it seems like all our goalies we're talking about have like Washington ties because Grubauer started in Washington, and Kempfer. It's kind of funny looking at it.
Yeah.
But like this past playoffs, like he had 16 games started, 10 wins, 4 losses. I mean, 902 save percentage. Excuse me. Is that really, lighting the world on fire? No. This past season, he did good, 921 save percentage and a 2.54 goals against. But like, I think Darcy Kempfer, I've always been a very big component of Darcy Kempfer because the talent's there. Like, if you look at his stats statistically each season, like, they're very good. But he can never stay healthy. Like this was one of the few seasons where he played quite a bit of games. This is the second season in his career he's played 50-plus games. And that's troublesome, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that shows he has durability issues. It's never been a talent thing with Kemper, in my opinion. It's been durability, but then when you keep getting knocked up, that kind of stunts your development. Does that make sense? At least, that's my kind of break on it. Like, it stunts, your development as a player. Now, when you kind of come down to it, let's go to Alexander Gorgiev. He's young. He's younger compared to the other goalies he had. He's 26 years old, 6'1", so he's not tiny, but he's not like, Vasilevsky size, so he's big enough. He had a bad year last year. In 28 games started, 15 wins, 10 losses, 2 overtime losses, 898 save percentage, and a 2.92 goals against. That was his worst year of his career. So if you look at it, right, 2000, like from his rookie year, 918, second year, 914, 910, 905, 898. There's a downward trend with Gorgiev. So I think with Gorgiev, if you also look at it, did he check out? Did he check out mentally? Because I think mentally he might have checked out, because I think Gorgiev, like, he came into the postseason this year, right? And he did phenomenal. Yep. I mean, like, these 2 games that he played, and the one he came in with action in the playoffs, he went 2 games played, 0 started, 0-1, 0-1 because he didn't get one of the losses. He had a 935 save percentage and 2.04 goals against. Like, the talent is there with Gorgiev, but is the buy-in there? So now when you have an organization that looks like they look at him as the starter, maybe this will be the beginning to a new era for him where it's like, okay, like, I'm finally giving my shot here. I'm not behind Lundqvist. I'm not behind Shesterkin. I can truly flourish in this new role. And I am truly the number 1 guy here. Maybe it will be good for him.
Before you change your screen, it's funny how we just mentioned that. If you look on the left of his name, there's a circle with 3 crowns. He's the one behind, the 2 up front, Lundqvist and Shesterkin. He just saying symbolism is a thing, right? But I'll tell you this, right? Shesterkin is one of those goalies that he needs to play consistently. There's no, we don't have the stats in front of us to really show you that, but I know for a fact when he plays consistently, game after game after game, like when Shesterkin was hurt after that car accident and he was required to start, those were his strongest games. Like, at first, it took him a second, 1 or 2 games. Once he got in rhythm, he started playing strong. He played well. Same thing when I think Lundqvist was a little bit hurt towards his last season, stuff like that. Whenever these guys go down for a stretch and he's had to step up, that's when he actually does well. It's when he strings those games together is when he does well. It's when he pops in for a game after 2 weeks, pops into another game after 3 weeks. That's when he struggles, when his game is not consistent. So yeah, mentally he's checked out. He's just not there. And I don't blame him. When you have freakishly good elite superstar goalies like that in front of you, and you're not comfortable being the second guy or the man behind the guy, it's always going to plague on your mind until you get out there and play consistently and say, hey, I have something to show, I have something to prove. You know what I mean? So now, stepping into the limelight, we're really going to see what he's about. And honestly, I wish him nothing but the best, because when he was here on the Rangers, I have to say that great attitude, great person, always doing all the extra stuff off the ice as well as on the ice. Team player, 100%. You know, that's why management and the players all backed him when he got into that altercation with D'Angelo. Obviously, he's one of those guys that everybody can relate to and everybody's good with. You know, so I wish him nothing but the best, and I expect to see nothing but the best. I expect to see him do very well this upcoming season with the Colorado Avalanche.
So, I'll be honest with you. I think that Gorgiev, with a more advanced role, more games, I definitely agree with you. I think he'll flourish because there's the talent's there. It just is. I just sometimes think the buy-in wasn't with New York, which with the human element, people are like, well, you're getting paid millions, you can do this, but like the human nature, right? Like if someone you keep getting overlooked, you're just gonna go whatever at this point. Like subconsciously, you're gonna be like, what the fuck? So I think it's kind of good for him to go to a situation where they're looking at him as the future, and who knows, maybe he's competing for the cup for this next year. Now, we talked about the Calgary side of things, right? Talked about Ottawa. Let's talk about Florida. Florida is an interesting team. Yeah. Now they're over the cap. Now, for the first time, I think in their history, they're like over the cap. Funny enough, they're 3.3.
So
yeah, 3.3 over the cap. I mean, I kind of like some of the moves that Florida did. I do think they overpaid for Tkachuk, though.
Yeah.
They gave up a lot. They gave up a lot. Now, do they get the best player at a young age? Yes.
Yeah.
But they gave up a lot.
They gave up 100 and something points. Huberdeau, who, let's face it, I mean, the guy was just an animal this past season. I mean, listen, their biggest thing was they're doing what Toronto isn't. And what I mean by that is they had a good team, won the President's Trophy. They were the number one team in the regular season, right? But we all know when you want to be competitive and you want to be a real team, not Toronto, right? This is what you do. You say, all right, cool. We're going to make some moves and we're going to jump over that hump. We're not going to keep the same guys and do the same thing because, you know, if you keep doing the same thing expecting it to change, let's be honest, you're crazy, Toronto. These guys said, all right, we got to change it up. Yeah, we have a great team. Can be the number one team in the NHL all season. But the way they're constructed, we're not going to get over that hump. We're not going to beat Tampa Bay, right? Who technically is a team to beat in the East. We're not going to beat them, and we need to change something up. They didn't wait 5, 10, a lifetime, or your whole Toronto career, whatever, right? They actually went out and said, okay, cool. Superstar, maybe this guy will get us over the hump. And I'm pretty sure if it doesn't happen again this next season, not saying that they're going to trade him, but they wouldn't be afraid to if they're getting something of equal value, maybe just a different player.
Absolutely. So, let's get into the player that they lost here, and then we'll compare him to Tkachuk.
100%.
Jonathan Huberdeau, 29 years old, plenty of years left in his prime, had a phenomenal season last year. Some people say that's because he played with Barkov, but I'm sorry. Like at some point, you have to credit this man with like his playmaking ability. He had in 8 games played, 30 goals with 85 assists for 115 points and a plus 35. Right, phenomenal numbers. Huberdeau, like let's not get it twisted. This isn't a guy that just mysteriously had a good year. Like last year, COVID shortened season, 61 points in 55 games. Season before that in Florida, we got dinged up a little bit. 69 games played, 78 points. Year before that, 82 games played, 92 points. Like he has shown he is capable of these high-producing seasons. This was a career year. But let's not fake and pretend like it's a freaking outlier. This guy can produce. I mean, at the very least, if he plays a full season, he'll be around 80 points. So I did see some of that chatter, and I think that was a little ridiculous. And I think Calgary, I admire what they did here because they improved their back end with adding Uyghur as well. And I think they won this trade because I think they got a very good player back he's not a Tkachuk type, but he's more of a Johnny Goudreau with Huberdeau.
I say he's a He's a polished player.
Yeah.
The reason he got to this point total is because he figured his game out, right? Whereas some of the other guys we're talking about, Johnny Goudreau, he's just coming into his own as far as figuring out that whole aspect, which is why he just came off his best season, right? He just figured out, okay, this is me. Like, he knew what he had, and he had to test the waters here and there. You know, obviously he still made an impact regardless, but he's figuring it out. This guy hasn't figured out now. He's been consistent for the past 4 seasons. This past season, I think he finally got it all together and said, boom, got it. Whereas Matthew Tkachuk, you look at him, right? What is his stats are for the past couple of seasons?
So career year, obviously, 104 points. So, like, it's not like there's a big point differential going the other direction. Like, they actually lost a couple points here. That being said, last year, 82 games played, 42 goals, 62 assists, 104 points. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal season. Year before that, 56 games played, 16 goals, 27 assists, 43 points. Year before that, 69 games played, 23 goals, 38 assists, 61 points. Year before that, 80 games played, 34 goals, 43 assists for 77. Like, if you look at all his season, he's been productive. Like, he's been productive, and he's been a very good player. And he's a lot younger than Huberdeau. So he is only 24 years old. So he is entering the... Yeah, he's entering the prime of his career.
Yep.
The one thing for me is this a guy you give up that much if you believe you are truly contending as Florida? You know what I mean? Like, I think you're better as a contender if you kept your pieces. Like, I think Calgary got far better as a team overall with this trade. I think Florida got better in the aspect they got a younger talent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think they did lose some, like, tangible assets. Like, going back into this cap, like, you have Barkov, and Barkov is phenomenal. You got Tkachuk. You got Sam Reinhart, who was starting to come into his own. You got Hornquist, who, you know, he is what he is at this age. Sam Bennett, you know, solid player. You got Duclair. You got Vahardy. Like, you got some nice players here. But the problem is I don't know if there's enough depth scoring. Because outside of Tkachuk and Barkov, like, Reinhardt's a solid player. Hornquist is okay at this point. Bennett, like, he's okay. I mean, I've never been the biggest Bennett fan, so I don't know if I trust him to produce on a yearly basis. Their defense with Ekblad and Montour and Forsling and Gudis, and, like, it's solid. Mark Stahl, even with the older veteran here, it's solid. Yeah. And then goaltending, I don't like Bobrovsky. I just don't like Bobrovsky. I just don't. I think
Knight will be coming for that spot probably mid-season. I think that there will be a changing of the guards in between those two this season. In my honest opinion, Knight has played well. Well, he's showing development. He's showing that he can play, and I think given the opportunity, he may take the spot.
Spencer Knight, and this is weird, right? Because goalies take longer to develop. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, when Jeremy Swayman got called up by the Bruins, I was a little apprehensive at first because I was like, I don't want to ruin him. Because, like, goaltending, I feel like there's been plenty great possible goaltenders that have been ruined because they got all up too early. And you shatter their confidence because goalie is a lot of it's mental. You know what I mean? It's a big mental game. Like, if you can't trust yourself, you're screwed. Spencer Knight being 21 years old, 6'3", 190. Oh my God, he looks like a kid. Like, this past season, he had 32 games played, 27 games started, 19 wins, 9 losses, 3 overtime losses for a 908 save percentage and 2.79 goals against. He played in some spot time last year, 3 games started, 4 games played, 919 save percentage, 2.32 goals against. I mean, if I'm in an ideal situation, I think he has the potential, obviously, to be a number one. Spencer Knight's been one of the more, like, touted prospects. I mean, I think they went with Spencer Knight over Devin Levi, that's currently playing for Northeastern, who won the Mike Richter Award of the best goaltender in the NCAA, and he's actually going. And Mike Richter's a stud. We're going to do a career video on him at some point. And they traded him to Buffalo, and he's going back to Northeastern. I'm excited because I'm going to get season tickets to Northeastern. And for me, it's pretty exciting because it'll be fun to watch. With Buffalo, I actually think they're very promising for a lot of different reasons. But Devin Levi is finally starting to hit that sweet spot. He's developing nice. But they traded Levi out to Buffalo. I think what would have been smarter is if you kept both of them. Because goaltender is such a hard position to judge.
It is.
Because like, you can have certain prospects that look super good in the minor levels, like the minor leagues, and then they get called up and it's too big for them. The moment's too big. Yeah. And that's why I get worried about getting called up a goalie. Now with Swayman, it worked out well. He had a fantastic season. But like with Spencer Knight, he had a solid year considering. But like 21 being up in the NHL is extremely young. We've seen that go in the polar opposite. Like a guy like Carter Hart, who broke records in the QMJHL, I feel like his confidence is at an all-time low because you call him up to a terrible situation. Now, mind you, Florida's a way better team, way better surrounding. He's getting wins. He's developing. But it's just I do feel a little bit for Spencer Knight in this regard. If he doesn't perform well, like they're kind of screwed because like Bravotsky, let's just go into his statistic. Like, everyone wants to hate on Tortorella, but it's due to Tortorella this man got paid. Like, this guy is not a $10 million goaltender, like, in any way, shape, or form. Like, he is like, if I was Florida, I would have tried to dump him. But let's go into his stats. He's 33 years old, which isn't that old for goaltenders considering. This past season, 54 games played, 53 started, 39 wins, 7 losses, 3 overtime losses, 913 save percentage of 2.67. The problem I have with Bravotsky is since his last season in Columbus, in the last 3 with Florida, it's like kind of meh, right? Like last season, the season before last season is like 30 games started, 19 wins, 8 losses, 2 overtime losses, 906. First season in Florida, 49 games started, 23 wins, 19 losses, a 900. Last season in Columbus, 61 games started, 37 wins, 24 losses, 1 overtime, like a 913 with a 2.58. Like, Bravotsky, I think, was super overrated. Super overrated. There is no way this man should be a $10 million goaltender. And the problem is that, like, the Florida Panthers, they're not in the situation to do this now because of the way they've kind of dealt with their cap. They would need to eat cap. They would need to eat cap to move him.
Yeah,
they would. And going to this team, I mean, unless you're going to trade and get rid of a guy like Hornquist, who's 35 and he's at $5 million, I mean, Bravotsky, how much longer has he got on that deal? He's got, my God.
He's got like 4 more years, 4 more years left.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Why?
So hold on. So let's go back to the original portion of this, of how we got into this team, right? Was this a good trade, right?
Yep.
The Chuck for, oh my God, it slipped my mind.
No, it was Kachuk got traded for essentially Goudro and Uyghur and some other picks. Apologize, we got a little on a tangent. I'll probably have to like chop that up a bit. But I think it's good. It's good in this aspect. You got younger.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Well, that's what I want to get at, right? So, what they did by moving Huberdeau, who was 29, I believe, they moved Huberdeau. They elongated the transition of what they're trying to do. Yeah, they're building a good team. Yeah, they just lost a guy who scored 115 points for a guy who just scored 104. Let's not play ourselves right here. That's amazing either way, right?
Yeah.
Not every team has a 100-point guy, right? So 100-point guy for another 100-point guy, right? This one's younger and still developing. With a bunch of younger players that you have on the roster that are still developing, I don't think, let me see, they only have 1 player over 30. 1.
Yeah.
That's it. Everybody else, they're all in the same age range. I want you to understand that how that helps that team, right? You have the one guy who's going to be the leader, who's going to be the sound mind thought that tells the younger guys, hey, this is how it should be, whatnot, show that leadership, right? You hope. Then all the other guys are going to be able to do one thing that probably Huberdeau couldn't do with them, and it's to relate. Now you have chemistry off the ice that should hopefully, right? And I'm assuming here that this is part of their thought process. He's young, right? He might be able to help the other players who are young and still somewhat developing and still around that same age, right? He may be that guy, that leader, not only while he's finding his game, help the other guys find their game, because they're all around the same age. They all have that same mentality. They all come from the same time frame, right? So there's a lot more to work with as a whole unit, whereas Huberdeau at 29, right, you look at all these ages, he's a few years removed from the whole core of 26, 24, 25-year-olds. And he's a little too young, not necessarily crazy young, but a little bit too young for the 35-year-old. So he's kind of like, he was always kind of like in that middle where he just, with those forwards, that he was like in between. So yeah, it worked last season. It's been working for a couple of seasons. It's been building. You had a great season. But hey, this isn't a bad move. This is one of those moves that, again, I think it's going to create more chemistry in the long run, and it's going to allow you to have a longer run because of his age.
Well, I would actually have to agree with that, because the average age, mind you, with Hornquist bumping it up a bit, is 26 years old. I'm not a big Sam Bennett fan. I think Reinhart can be okay. I think both of them are a little bit overpaid, in my opinion. But, I mean, you have a very good youth here. Their oldest part of their team is their defenseman. Ekblad is a good defenseman. Montour's pretty solid. Forsling, Gudis. I mean, like, you have a competent defenders here. But
you only have two guys over 30. Only two guys over 30 on a defensive core. So, again, they're all... And you look at the defense core, right? What are they? 26, 25, 22? They're all around that same age range. Again, people don't understand that playing with guys that are around your same age means you not necessarily have the same mentality, but you can relate to them a lot better. Then you understand? I think that as a whole, this may help them create that off-ice chemistry. Because like you look at Tampa Bay, right? Who they're chasing technically, right? All their guys, pretty much the same age, right? They just have a few young guys in there. Hold on, let me take a look.
But to kind of, I'll say, wrap this up, I do think Calgary won that trade. I think Florida. Yes. I think in the future, this might be better depending on how those draft picks pan out, though, too. Because we could be looking at this like, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but if Calgary drafts a Hall of Fame type player, or even a super like an all-star type player, I mean, it definitely is a win for them. But like, I think with Tkachuk getting younger, getting him to a longer deal at like 24 years old, I think personally that Florida's a goaltender away from competing.
Yeah,
I do.
I agree 100%.
And if Spencer Knight plays well, it takes that spot. I mean, I don't know how Florida's going to deal with that cap space, but we'll see. Because they also need to dump somebody. That's the thing. They need to get rid of someone. That's a few million cap space. So what do you get rid of? Do you get rid of Duclair or Carter Verhaeghe? Bent, like, it's just... if I was them, if they're going to go with the youth movement, get rid of Hornquist. Like, move him. Like,
well, again, I think he provides that age-old knowledge or whatnot. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt him being moved. Again, right? They are even with this move. I still think that they're gonna. They may not win the President's Trophy, but they're definitely a playoff-bound team.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes, again, you look at a team like the Rangers, right? What was their most successful line throughout the playoffs? It wasn't their superstars, as crazy as it sounds. It was their kid line. Yeah. And they're all around the same age. They were able to bond and grow stronger as a unit. And none of them are superstars yet. None of them are that by far, right? but their mentality, their chemistry, because of their ages, right? It translated to the ice, and they were able to grow. Even in a post interview, they said, "We wish we would have had this lineup all season to really watch them grow, because we feel like it's going to be a line to be reckoned with." And that wasn't just that, like, they really didn't like talking about it like that, but coaches spoke of it like that, players spoke of it like that. Now look at Florida, where you have a whole team like that. That's dangerous. That's dangerous.
So, switching gears here.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens.
Ooh, why would we want to do this? Okay.
I mean, I love me some Martin St. Louis. I loved him when he played for Tampa. Loved when he played for the Rangers. That dude is a beast, and he brought out the best in that team last season when they made that coaching change. Yeah, I think generally when you get a player that has actually had to really work hard, and I'm not insulting greats like Gretzky, but to be fair, I don't think he was as effective as a coach. It came super natural to him to play. Whereas like a guy like Martin St. Louis, I'm not saying he didn't have talent, because obviously he did. He's a Hall of Fame type player in my opinion. But he had to work his ass off to get recognition due to his size. So I think he can connect better. But I think this is a team that some people can be sleeping on right now. Because they don't have any cap space, so they're not going to make any big deal moves here, right? They're underneath the cap. But I think like you have a lot of talent here. You have Nick Suzuki, who has like they won that trade with Las Vegas. Like they won that trade. Like those guys that
100%.
were sent over are no longer with the team.
Yep.
Nick Suzuki, you have Brandon Gallagher, you have Josh Anderson, you have Evgeny Dadonov, you got Mike Hoffman. Now, Mike Hoffman might be kind of a piece of garbage, but he's a good player. You have Christian Dvorak, you have Paul Byron, you got Joel Armida. I mean, and then this rookie, Juhar Slavkovsky. I apologize if I'm butchering the name. Slavkovsky,
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna let the more intelligent person say the name, and then you got Cole Caulfield, who after a really, really, really rough season, like in the beginning of it, started tearing it up when Martin St. Louis took it. And like what I liked from that is when you saw St. Louis individually working with Caulfield, the smaller guy himself. Be like, yo, this is what you got to do. Be here, and then you see it in game translate for goals. So I think Cole Caulfield will continue to develop. And then a trade they made, which was kind of interesting because he's an RFA, he's not signed yet, is Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach, a centerman from Chicago.
Right, I was gonna say from Chicago.
Really wasn't really like he was doing okay over there. Wasn't really panning out like he thought, but he's only 21 years old. The potential, I think, is there to be a very solid second-line center. And so, like, I kind of like what the Canadiens have done this offseason. I think losing Romanov was a big deal because I think Romanov is a very solid player and he's young. You get Matheson from Petrie in that Petrie deal. Oh, yeah, because that's where, wasn't Petrie sent? Was he sent to Pittsburgh or was he sent? I'd have to make sure, but they got Matheson from Pittsburgh. You got Joel Edmondson, David Savard, Justin Barron, Jordan Harris. You got Chris Weidman. Like, you got some solid defenders. And goaltender, though, I don't know how this is going to pan out. Because Carey Price, I think he might be done. I think he might be done. Carey Price, when healthy...
Hold on, let me just... So it was Matheson and a 4th-round draft pick for Petrie and Ryan Poling.
So I apologize. Early in the video, I said he went to Nashville. So no, he went to Pittsburgh. That's correct. So yeah, like I think they got younger on defense, obviously, with Matheson. I think Matheson is a little bit overpaid, but he's got some talent to his game. I mean, I kind of like how Montreal's looking. The one thing I have is, like, I think Jake Allen could be a very competent starter. Mm-hmm. I just don't know about Samuel Montembeault, how good of a backup he'll be. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my one worry, because Carey Price looks like he's done from all reports. And, I think that, quite frankly, Montreal has enough pieces here where maybe not a playoff team, but they'll be one of those fringe teams. Like, I think they'll be like one of those teams that could make it on the wild card. because I think you have Suzuki, you have Gallagher, you have Anderson, Dadonov, Hoffman, Caulfield, and if this rookie draft pick pans out, you have Slafkovsky. I'm butchering the name.
Jesus.
But how do you say it? Just say it.
Hold on. Let me get back to it. I was looking at something else. Whew. Okay. So this is how you say his name. Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky. Yeah.
Slav in Maikovsky. Okay, so like, I think he could be panning out well.
I want you to make sure you remember that name. So when he starts scoring goals, you have to say the name.
I'm just gonna call him the Slavky. Just make it super simple. But I think he's absolutely a very good prospect that could pan out. But there is a little couple red flags with his motor, I believe. I think his motor was questioned at the draft. So we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, like I don't know. I like what Montreal's doing, and that pains me to say as a Bruins fan, but I think with Martin Sully, it's good.
Yeah, no. I think that the Canadiens are banking on a draft pick they had from a few years ago, from 2017. They've had him in the system. They've brought him out to play a few games here or there for them as a backup. He looked solid the first couple of games. His name is Caden Primo.
He's looked kind of mediocre though when he's played his like spot starts though.
Right, but again, those are spot starts. But if you look consistently at his career overall, he has a pretty okay career so far. He has struggled when he's been called up, but let's face it, he's been called up in very bad situations when Montreal has been kind of struggling, and obviously they needed someone to fill in a spot here or there. So yeah, it's gonna look rough. It's one of those things. Maybe the situation was too big for him. Maybe the lights were too big for him at that point. But hey, the guy is what? He's only 22. He's still developing. He did well in the AHL. I know it doesn't translate to the NHL, but he did well last season. Well, decently well, but he definitely got into the playoffs and played better than he did all season. So there's some show of growth there. But normally save percentage over 900 outside of the call-ups in the NHL. He's normally over 900%. Normally like two goals against average. Last season was probably his worst. But once he got into the playoffs, he kind of reverted back to what he's been doing.
Well, he has looked good. Like, okay, so let's just go into it. I picked up EliteProspects.com.
Gotcha.
First year Montreal, first year pro after Northeastern. We'll look at those stats. Northeastern, 933 save percentage, 931. Like, fantastic statistics, right? Montreal Canadiens, right? 2 games played, 931 save percentage, 101. In the AHL that year, 33 games played, 908, 2.45, 17, 11, 4. Not bad. 2020, 2021, second season as a pro. 4 games played, 849 save percentage, 4.16 goals against, a 1-2-1 in the NHL. But in the AHL, 16 games played, 2.110 goals against, a 909 save percentage, and an 11-4 record. Last season was a disaster for him. He went 12 games played, a 4.62 goals against. That's a really high ERA.
Yeah.
868 goals. 868 save percentage, a 1-7-1 record. Now, mind you, Montreal
don't know how they made it into the playoffs. Don't know how they did it.
Montreal had a really bad team this past season, right? But that's was his record in the big league. But in the minor league, Laval, again, he had a 909 save percentage, a 2.94 goals against, 33 games played. And then in the playoffs, he stepped up his game. 14 games played, 2.17 goals against, 936 save percentage, and a 9-5 record. Now, I'm looking at Cap Friendly. I was looking at Cap Friendly. He wasn't assigned technically to the Canadiens organization, I believe.
He's still a restricted free agent for them. If you go lower, if you go lower all the way past the roster, it'll take you to the AHL teams, or what they called hold on one second. They have a particular name for it. Non-roster guys. So these are all the guys that are on their on their, like AHL team, or that they can call up at any time that they actually
Oh,
have the
okay,
roster.
yeah, I see it now. Yeah,
All right. So
I
if you
think
go further down.
Yeah, I see him. I think with him being 22, he had that fantastic postseason with Laval.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that instills some confidence. Maybe you're right. Maybe you go with the tandem of Jake Allen and Primo if he can win the job out of camp. But that being said, man, like I do like a lot of what I'm seeing out of the Canadiens organization. I think they went with a smart pick. Let's go to this topic. Do you think the Montreal Canadiens skipping Shane Wright was a mistake?
Well, what team did he get picked up by, Shane Wright?
He got picked 4th overall by the Seattle Kraken.
Seattle, that's right. I was just looking at his stuff right now. See, well, that's one of those things. It's difficult to really call that one. He may have been overall the better pick right now, but let me take a look at him overall for a second, right?
Oh, I'm gonna pick up his. Head up on over.
Gotcha. 6'1", 199 pounds, 4th overall, first right. He shoots right-handed. He's 18 years old. Let's see his career. I mean, in the OHL, he did really well, but in the under 20 for Canada, he only played 2 games, had 1 assist. That was it for him.
I mean, but let's look at this. Let's just go into it. I'm not gonna go do AAA because in AAA he had a phenomenal season under 1600.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, bro, you go to AAA, we're looking at way bigger numbers. Like, that's just ridiculous. So we're not gonna touch that one.
That's crazy. I'm gonna pretend that's what I put up. But Kingston for Kingston, his first years in the OHL, 58 games played, 39 goals, 27 assists, 66 points. That's really good.
Yep.
He played Canada Black under 17, was the captain apparently. 5 games played, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. That's solid. He didn't play obviously in the COVID year because all of that going in, but he played for the under 18 Canada WJC. 5 games played, 9 goals, 5 assists for 14 points. Extremely good tournament.
Yep.
This past season with the Kingston Frontiacs, he had 63 games played, 32 goals, 62 assists for 94 points. I mean, some people are knocking his attitude that he had, he was very cocky, very full of himself. Mm-hmm. I know everybody wants people to be humble. Now, I'm not saying to be like a Yakupov, ignorant, where it's I'm above the world when, he had a lot of holes in his game. Mm-hmm. But to kind of say that these guys don't have an ego at all, I mean, we'd be lying to ourselves, dude. We have egos in our day-to-day. We have egos in our day-to-day jobs.
Yeah.
So I'm not, as long as he's not telling teams, go F yourself, I'm fine with him being I'm not going to be around in, pick 5. This guy, or pick 4, this guy has the belief that he's going to get first overall. And to be fair, I think Shane Wright has the chance to develop, to that number 1 center and probably better than Slavsky, right? And that's what I'm calling him. Keeping it very simple for me and my very, very, very simple self. But I think he has the potential to be greater because he's going to be a center, and he could be a two-way player. I know people question the maturity, but how old is this person again?
18?
18 years old.
I believe 18.
18 years old, 6 foot, 190. 18 years old. Obviously, there are more 18. There are some more mature 18-year-olds than others, and some are more programmed better, where they're just going to respond very PC, very appropriate. But he's 18. He's going to grow. You're going to learn. As long as he's not doing anything illegal or disgusting, I'm fine with it. And I think that for me personally, I think Montreal should have gone with Shane Wright, because I think having another center in their system to the potential to be another top guy would have had Montreal looking pretty elite. Now, I could be wrong, right? I could be completely wrong, and hell, who knows? Maybe Slavsky, whatever how you say it, he could turn out to be a very elite player, maybe it's a wash or maybe it's in favor for Montreal with this draft pick. But, I think passing up the opportunity to draft such a good center, I don't know. I think center's one of your most important positions next to goaltending in hockey. And that's,
but I think for them, I think that you look at their center core, and always adding more centers is always a nice thing, but let's face some facts, right? You can have too much of one position.
True.
Right? They don't necessarily translate to wings all the time, all that stuff, whatnot. But you look at what they have, as far as Montreal is concerned, you already have about 5-6 guys that can play center.
Yeah.
Right? You have some of those guys that also play wing, but as you and I both know, just because you say you can, doesn't mean you can.
Yeah.
Okay? Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of those situations. Right? Maybe they said, okay, look, we're pretty heavy in the middle with some talent and some potential talent already. Some guys that are possibly going up. Okay, they got the Dosh situation handled and everything else, right? But what they don't have is more than one or two, guys that really fit the wing role and can be considered going elite. Now, I looked at Slavkovsky, right? I looked at his numbers. Nothing to call home about. So maybe they saw something we didn't. The kid's 6'4", 218. Maybe Martin St. Louis say, hey, listen, I need a guy that I can sit on top of his shoulders when I'm coaching everybody else, and this is the guy, right? Who knows? It may have been something as simple as that, right?
You're so stupid.
But I mean, if you look at his numbers,
he's a big boy. Like, he's 18, 6'4", 229. Like, he's a big friggin' boy. And
right.
You can't teach that.
You can't teach that, right? But now you take him, you have a guy like Martin St. Louis. If he can make him play his type of game with that body frame, the kid could be something special.
I mean, so to be fair to this kid, because he played in the pros, that's the pro league there. Mm-hmm. In the pro league, in the Liga, 31 games played, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. Nothing special, but you're playing against men and you're like a 17-year-old. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
It seemed when he played in the under 20 where he should have been. 11 games played, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points. Over a point per game. Pretty solid. Yep. Season before that, 16 games played, 8 goals, 5 assists, 13 points. I mean, in the Slovak under 18 team, international junior, 6 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points. I think
they went for the fit. I think they went for something
I think with the fit, and it's weird because the pandemic, unfortunately, it kind of makes it hard for some of these because everything was shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, in a more fuller season for the under 18 team, 39 games played, 22 goals, 30 assists for 52 points. I mean, it does look like he has the potential to be a good point producer, and he's big. We just don't know how well that's going to translate. So we'll see. I think that like in the under 18 Hlinka Gretzky Cup, 5 games played, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. Like maybe he impressed, saw some scouts saw something there. I mean, to be fair, and I'm not trying to because he's a Slovak, right? He's from Slovakia.
Yep.
And they had that was the first time ever 3 Slovakians were picked in the first round.
Yep.
In history of the NHL. But I'll say this, is that, quite frankly, like Pavel Bure, right? And this was because of the red wall. I'm not completely comparing the two. Due to kind of the secretive information and how things were so difficult to obtain, they got, I think, what did the Canucks get Pavel Bure? In the 4th or 5th round?
Yeah.
And it was absolutely, it's absolutely crazy because Pavel Bure is a Hall of Famer, one of the best fucking players to ever play the game. And I contend to this day, if Pavel Bure didn't get hurt and his knees start going, he would have put up even more prolific numbers. But back on point here is that this guy's big, got some weight on him already. He's played against men, so I think he has the potential maybe to have the better first year as a rookie. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Maybe, not trying to be biased, I think maybe Shane Wright might be the better prospect overall. But like I said, I could be proven wrong.
So Pavel Bure was picked 113th in the 1989 draft. 113th.
That's crazy.
Jesus. But hey, someone saw something, right? The fact that 3 Slovakian players got picked in the first round, right? There's something we're not seeing. There's something they saw. Something's missing in translation. You hope, right? Because you hope that they made a good pick. But I mean, just statistically, none of us see it. I don't think anybody says like, "Wow, great pick." Everybody's like, "Okay, we got to see what he does." Right? Whereas Wright, he's a little bit more proven. It's almost like Wright is more like Sam Darnold. If you go to football, right? Hold on.
That's disrespectful.
Right? He was expected to be the number 1 pick, and he fell down. Right? And he got picked up by the Jets.
I'm looking at you sideways right now. Keep going.
Of course you are. Right? He got picked up by the Jets. Now, I'm not saying Seattle's the Jets, right? But let's face some facts here. You're going to a franchise that's in their second year? Right? They're still growing. Nobody knows where. Nobody knows how. Right? There's still a lot of questions to be asked. Will he be coached properly enough to really fulfill his potential? Whereas the Slovakian player, right? I'm not going to butcher his name because I'm not looking at it right now. Slavlaski, yeah, I got it. He's going into a team that has mostly young players, and he may be able to just fit in. So who may make the more immediate impact? Maybe Wright will make a more immediate impact because he's going to be on a team that's kind of questionable all around. It's still in the growing phase, right? But who will develop best? It may not be Wright. Just saying.
I mean, I think Wright has all the tools, though, to be that next piece. Watching him play junior, he was electric. I mean, I think he was. I think he was an electric player, very good player. And I think, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know who's going to develop.
Right. But, I mean, pure numbers-wise, yeah, I think Montreal messed up. I think they should have probably picked up Wright, numbers-wise. But the part that we don't know is how much, like you said, there was talks of his persona, right, and his attitude. How much of that would have affected growth, the locker room of what they're trying to build in Montreal, and how much was he humbled by this experience, or maybe even added a chip on his shoulder that's going to make him work even harder to prove a point. So
I mean, that's true. Like this might actually have been the best thing to happen to Shane Wright.
You know what I mean?
Because
if you always have that one guy who's been told you are the man, you are the best, Paul, right? And situations like that happen, right? It takes you back a second to make you realize, like, you know what? Maybe I don't have everything in the bag. Maybe I don't have the whole thing down. Maybe I need to work more at my. And before you know it, you're improving your game more than you even thought, right? Maybe that happens to Shane Wright. Hopefully that happens to him, and maybe he's the next superstar. You know what I'm saying? But we don't know. These are speculations. These are assumptions. These are based off of numbers and ideologies, right? And we're hoping that that he does have a good career, and that maybe Montreal does eat their words, or maybe it goes the other way around, and maybe Wright ends up being one of those, casual players that gets traded from team to team to team, and he was just one of those guys that was really good for where he was at.
That's true. That's a very, we'll have to see how things pan out.
Yeah.
But it'll be very intriguing to see. Montreal made the draft. Very interesting. And I'll say this, the Montreal, very beautiful city. Have you ever been?
Bro, I went to college half an hour away from Montreal.
Dude, it's
Party time, Montreal all day. Love it. Love it. I kid you not. I go there all the time. Bro,
dude,
I love it. I haven't been in a few years, but I definitely want to go back. People of Montreal, I love you guys. Always fun, always amazing. The Rocket's right across the border. As soon as you cross a place called the Rocket, craziness. Just go to Montreal. Skip it. You're going to see the craziness. Just go across.
I'm actually going to be going, I think, with my girl. I think we're going to try to go within the next year or two because she actually speaks French. So,
nice.
Yeah, so she can speak it and I can look really stupid. So I'm pretty looking forward to that.
Can she teach me? Like, dead ass.
I mean, dude, maybe.
I want to learn. Like, I have French heritage. I want to learn how to speak French, to be honest. So,
dude, I would love to as well, but I also realize that I can barely speak English, so I'm just going to take my losses and, go from there.
I'm trying to add a third. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm so superior.
I apologize that I'm superior to you in the language games.
Oh yeah. the only part in life because you're my son. But
God.
I think honestly that covers pretty much all we wanted to talk about here, and I mean, I really can't think of anything crazy. If
you want to take a quick look at your team, obviously we have.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll end on a sad note.
We have preferences, right? Everybody watching this, we all have preferences. Let's just take a quick look at each other's teams. You know,
let's,
you have a team. I have a team. If you have a team, this will be where you type in the comments, hey, take a look at my team more in depth. Take a look at this player, whatever you want. Let us know. We're going to look at it. Right now, we're going to look at Boston. That's his team.
Let's start off sad first. Good idea. So, okay. Ugh. All right. I hate Don Sweeney. We have 4.7 in projected cap space, which, by the way, is not true because we have to still sign Bergeron. I don't know if Krejci's coming back. I don't know about that, but we'll see. And we still have to sign Pavel Zacha. So, don't know where that money's going to come from, but let's get right into it. David Pastrnak for $6.66 million. He's going to be looking for a raise in this next season, right? Mm-hmm. We'll see how that pans out. I think you got Brad Marchand at 6.1, very underpaid in my opinion. You got Taylor Hall, $6 million. You have Charlie Coyle, 5.25, completely overpaid. Jake DeBrusk, $4 million, a little rich for me, but whatever. Nick Foligno, $3.8 million, makes me sad every day. Craig Smith, 3.1, which for his production's fine. Nosk, 1.75, fine with that. Wagner, he's currently sitting in the AHL, 1.3, so that's overpay. Trent Frederick, first round pick. Boston didn't pan out, no surprise. And Oskar Seen, he's just he actually looked like a solid bottom six guy if he was to ever become anything. Mm-hmm. And then you got Pavel Zacha you need to sign, he's one of these players, Pavel Zacha, that when you watch him play, you just see so much potential, but he's never been able to click. Never been able to click. So maybe a chance there to become a top six center. Defense, you got Charlie McAvoy, 9.5. I like Charlie a lot. I like Hampus Lindholm a lot for 6.5. Mm-hmm. Brandon Carlo, to be fair to him, when he's not hurt, is a very effective defenseman. 4.1 I'm fine with. Matt Grzelcyk can't stay healthy, so 3.6 I think is high. Forberg at 3. He's a bottom two pair in my opinion, a little rich. Mike Riley, $3 million, way too rich. Jacob Zorbril. This is okay. So when the Bruins picked 13th, 14th, and 15th, it was Shenison, DeBrusk, and Zorbril. Now DeBrusk is finally coming to his own. Shenison will never be in the NHL. He just won't.
No.
Jacob Zorbril was finally bucking that trend last season from those draft picks that oh my god, only one made the NHL and he's kind of mediocre. Zorbril, when he was healthy last season, was really good. Very good puck mover, big body, pretty young, cheap. If he's healthy, and that's the thing with these defensemen, if they're healthy, I think Zorbril can be a top 4 guy because I like a lot of the skills he has. I am at fault of this at time. I think we get a little too harsh on these prospects, and we expect them to immediately jump the NHL. He just needed longer to learn and kind of learn the pro game, right? and especially defense, one of the hardest positions next to goaltending in the NHL to learn. Defensemen usually take a little bit longer to develop. So, for a guy like Jacob Zorba, like I think he can become, something of a pretty nice piece. Goaltending, and Connor Clifton, he's a bottom 2 pairing. Like, he's $1 million. I'm fine with that. He's okay. He was a forward that was converted a defenseman that I think should be converted back to a forward, in my opinion. But
he's more forward on the ice. Got it.
Yeah. So you have Linus Ullmark, age 28, making $5 million for the next 3 seasons, and then you have Jeremy Swayman, who was a stud last year. He's going to be making $925,000, and then he becomes an RFA. I think Jeremy Swayman is the key to what this Bruins team does. If he keeps developing on his fucking trajectory, Bruins are going to be a wild card team. Mm-hmm. The problem I have, look at this roster. You have Pasternak, Marchand, and Hall, who I think can be top line wings on any team. Right? I think Taylor Hall was underappreciated last season because with between him and Pasta, when they finally got paired together between Halla, and this isn't not to knock Halla, if you got them a true second line center, I think the production would have been far greater. I think Taylor Hall is a great playmaker. Sometimes I wish he would shoot a bit more, but I think he's a very good player. I think he's a top line wing. This is where you run into the problem with the Boston Bruins construction of their roster. Charlie Coyle is a third line center. Why are we paying him $5.25? Is it just because he's from Weymouth, Massachusetts? Because if so, that's stupid.
That's the hometown bonus.
Yeah, that's the hometown bonus. And then Jake DeBrusk. Is he truly that good? Could he get 30 goals? He produced this amount this season? Was it because of him finally coming to his own, or was it because he was playing on a line with Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand? I mean, like, what is the thing here? Because you know what? I'm going to get into it because it kind of pisses me off. I think with Jake DeBrusk, it's effort. It's effort. What he wants to do that week, that's what he decides to do. Mm-hmm. And Jake DeBrusk this past season, he had 25 goals, 17 assists, 42 points, and 77 games played. Is that $4 million? No. Okay, thank you. So, DeBrusk, and the Boston fan base is like, oh, he can be a 30-goal scorer, he can be a 30-goal. Like, you can't keep saying he can be if he's never done it, right? And I think that he's going to be going into his 6th year. They had to sign him, I guess, in some, because you don't want to just lose him for nothing, right? Yeah. But I don't see anything there with DeBrusk that proves to me he can produce this on his own. He needs to be hand-fed. Like Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron can bump up his stats. DeBrusk, to me, isn't a good finisher. I've watched him live. I watched all the Bruins games. He sucks at finishing. Like, if it's wide open, he'll bury it. But, like, I've seen him hit far more glass than ever net in my life. Like, and I don't think he has that finishing touch. I think he's a tweeter, right? I think he's a good second line to a good third line guy. I don't think he's a top line guy. I think only with elite players like Brad Marchand and Patrice Bergeron, that's the only place he would succeed on a top line. And that kind of comes into my problem with this roster construction, right? Pavel Zacha's not even signed. He's just not. You have currently on roster signed for centers Charlie Coyle, Tomas Nosek, Trent Frederick, and that's it. You have no depth. And this comes down to a lot of bad Boston Bruins drafting by Don Sweeney and, like, not having these assets develop. I mean, even the draft pick they had a few years ago, like Beecher, who's going to be out of camp trying to make it, they drafted him as a center, but he wasn't that great at Michigan. So it's like, I feel like a lot of the Bruins problem comes from, like, just like buddy, like the buddy system where, like, oh, this guy played for the Bruins, this guy played here, like, oh, I know this guy, like, this guy's dating my sister, I'm gonna sign him to, I'm gonna, like, you know what I mean? It's just they don't go with talent evaluation. Right. And I think, quite frankly, I think we actually have the wing talent, but Patrice Bergeron's getting older. And is Patrice Bergeron actually gonna come back? I mean,
that's a tough one, yeah. That's a tough
because
one
like
right
they said reports have said he's coming back, but how much of a discount do you want a guy who just won a Selkie? How much of a discount is he gonna take?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you gonna disrespect him and say, oh, here's a couple million? Or what you should do, in my opinion, cut some of the fat off of this roster. Like, why does Nick Foligno have a no movement clause, a no trade clause? What? What? You signed this man for 3.8. Don, what were you smoking, crack? And then Charlie Coyle, I get it. He's from Weymouth, Massachusetts. He's from the Boston area. Listen, I don't give a fuck if he was born in the fucking ice rink itself. He's overpaid. And the sad part is, right, I like Charlie Coyle's game a lot. I think he's a very effective center. He's just overpaid. It's like Marchand and Pasternak are underpaid. Hall, I think, appropriate of what he's at. It's weird with the Bruins. They'll either underpay you or overpay you. There's no in between.
No in between.
Like, besides Hall, I mean, Charlie Coyle should probably be making $3 million. DeBrusk should be making $2 million. I mean, Foligno should be making league minimum for how bad he played last year. I mean, Craig Smith, around $2 to $3 million, I can digest. Nosek, that's fine. Chris Wagner was in the AHL last season for most of it. I mean, I don't know, man. I just...
So going to Jake DeBrusk, right? I see what you're talking about on his point totals per season and everything, whatnot. You know, starts off his career 43 points. You're like, oh man, first season, 70 games, 43 points. 16 goals, 27 assists. You're like, oh my god, yeah, maybe it's something special. And the next year you get 68 games, 42 points, something special, yeah. Then you have 65 games, 35. It was just an off year. Right, and then you have the COVID season and whatnot. 41 games, 14 points. That's kind of, yeah, it's kind of bad. Then you have last year, where he looks like he's kind of coming back to what he was before. Now, my question to you is, as you see some of these elite superstars maturing now closer to the age of 26, 27, as a Boston Bruins fan, or even if you were in management, would you expect this to be the year where he polishes off the dirt and says, this is what I am, and hopefully be at least a shell of what you've been expecting?
I mean, if you think that, I want to know what drugs you're taking, and I want to ingest them myself.
I'll send you my medication list later.
So they're very strong. I mean, this is coming from somebody that watches him night in, night out. Jake DeBrusk's motor at times can be very good. But so when Jake DeBrusk decides to skate, he's good. He's a solid player. I don't think he has the finishing or the shot that an elite winger has. I don't think he has the vision that an elite winger has. The biggest attribute that DeBrusk has, he's average to above average on most things, right?
Okay.
His greatest attribute is his hustle. When he has his legs moving, he's a pretty fast player. He can create opportunities. When he's buzzing around on the cycle, that's when he's most effective. And what these stats don't show, and I'm actually going to try to find them, is that a lot of those stats came from when he was bumped up to the first line. He just wasn't that guy, in my opinion. I don't think he'll ever be that guy that kind of really turns it on. And gotcha. I think he's going to be one of these guys that's just quite frankly
mediocre throughout the league and probably
an average above average player. Max Domi type player. An average NHLer. Not bad, but are you looking at him?
Home about,
yeah, nothing
gotcha.
to write home about. He's just a very mediocre player.
Gotcha. Okay, I mean, Tyler Hall, I think his career has been a bad, run of situations. He's always ended up on the wrong line, in the wrong situation, and then when he does produce, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I like Hall. I've always actually liked Hall as a player. Um,
look at it. He had 61 points last season on 81 games. Like, that's solid. But,
yeah.
I mean, the problem with Hall, outside that one horrendous part with Buffalo, if you look at it, injuries, durability. I mean, like, outside of this year with the Devils, where he just was tearing up the world, he's around a point per game player, or like a little bit below that. And I think he's a very good player. I think with Boston, he played that's second most in the season, 81. He had 20 goals, 41 assists for 61 points. And I think if you watched him play, you would have appreciated his two-way game.
Yeah.
But it's just Boston sucks at just picking the good guys, the right guys to fit in the system. Because like Eric Hall had a career year, but you give anyone, Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak, I think me or you could get 40 points. Like
put me at center, I'll be alright.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's, I think, I don't know. I think like there's a lot of talent on this roster.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, the center is our weakest position, and like even when Patrice Bergeron signs, I mean like, hopefully we sign Pavel Zacha, but am I feeling comfortable with Pavel Zacha as the number 2 center or Charlie Coyle? No, because I think Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha are the same type of player. I think Pavel Zacha is faster and has a little bit more talent, but I think they're very similar. But Charlie Coyle's strength is his puck possession game. Mm-hmm. That's the strength of him. He's a big body, big puck control, but he doesn't have the finishing that a lot you would want to see in a top 6 guy. And I think Pavel Zacha, there's always been that untapped potential. Does he reach that with Boston? I don't think so. So, I think the Bruins will be a wild card team to Marchand is going to be out. I think McAvoy is going to be out. I think there's a few key players that are going to be out for us at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I read that.
I don't think the Bruins are going to make the playoffs this season. I don't think it's going to be a good season. So, but hopefully the youth develops, and maybe I'm proven wrong. So, let's get into. Oh wait! Before I switch,
Yep.
There is one player that I hope makes the team this year. It is this man, Fabian Lysell. Fabian Lysell is a stud. He played for the Vancouver Giants, I believe, and he absolutely tore it up. Let me actually pull up his statistics, because I think this guy has a chance to be an elite level player. I mean, I don't say that often with some of these guys, but like this guy looked like truly impressive. So he's from Sweden, so that's a good thing. He is 19 years old, 5'10", 176 pounds, and let's just get into it. So, for this past year, for the Vancouver Giants, he had, in 53 games played, 22 goals, 40 assists for 62 points. Very good season. 12 playoff games, he had 4 goals, 17 assists for 21 points. Like, that's a very good season. I mean, I think Lysell, like, the big thing with Lysell is if you look at the highlights, it's crazy. Like, there's, like, people have said on a very bad, I mean, I don't think bad, but I think on a very kind of, like, average Vancouver Giants team,
he stood out.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was told, and Vancouver Giants fans, if I'm wrong, I apologize. But, like, it just, I think with Lysell, there's just so much talent there that it's kind of nasty. Like, I'm going to do something that we haven't done on this show yet, but we're going to do it for the Gipper here. We're going to go pace go. We're going to show some highlights.
Not out. Thorpe centered it. Lysell point blank scores!
Okay, first of all, that announcer needs to be replaced. My man said point blank. He was on like at the top of the between the two circles. That was not point blank.
The Giants sent it ahead. Lysell, right circle, shoots. He scores.
Well, he had a little bit more enthusiasm there.
And it is a 3-1 game.
Yeah. I think we're going to comment the commentators before we comment him.
His skating's really good, and his playmaking is as well.
Okay. He knows where to go. Like, it looks like he just looks like he knows where to go to get the puck and put it in the net. So he kind of looks like what you expect to see from DeBrusque.
Yes, but like he has some really. He has a good nose. He has a very good nose for where to be, but also he. I hope it shows it in this highlights. He has really good hands. Like he's a really smooth playmaker. And look at that forecheck. Look at this.
Chuck's gonna get it. Only his second goal of the season. Lankow in the middle. Lysell steals, scores.
I mean, I wish I pulled up.
He has a nose for the goal. Yeah, he has a nose for the goal, man. He just he's a forechecker. How you call it? He uses his speed. He kind of knows when to turn it up and to turn it on. See, like he just knows where to be, where the puck is gonna go. That's nice. That's nice to see. When you have a player like that, you want to develop him in all the other games and leave that part alone, because if you try to do anything to that part, they can lose it.
Absolutely. Like I think there's a lot of potential here for Lysell, and I think he's impressed in camp. Now, I think that's enough of that for now. But like I think that like quite frankly, I think with Lysell, what I liked a lot about from some of his camp and some of his games I've even watched, he just looked like a very, very solid hockey player. And that's what we need here in Boston. We need more guys that are going to kind of produce at an elite level. We need something in the development pool, and that's the one thing where Sweeney has failed terribly. He's traded away a lot of our draft picks chasing a cup, where I think if we kept some of those draft picks, maybe we'd have a better pool to pull from. But I think, regardless, I think Fabian Lysell could be a top six winger in the NHL. I like a lot what I see. So I just wanted to touch upon that before we completely left my team. So we left it on somewhat of a positive note. Now, let's get into a team on the rise, a team I actually like quite a bit, the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
So
the Rangers here, right? Projected hit is 77 mil on the cap, which gives us about almost 5 mil left, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty good. I mean, roster size right now, we're 4 contracts out of what the league is looking for. As far as like roster, like the actual roster size, we're still missing a few pieces. Nothing is definite. One of the names that's on here that's a restricted free agent at the moment, the RFA, is Kaapo Kakko, right? A lot of questions about surrounding him right now. He was part of that kid line that helped them in the playoff run. But let's start off at the top here, right? Artemi Panarin, 11 mil player, 100%. I can't even knock it. My man, he scores, he passes, he makes other players better even when he's struggling. He's one of those guys that his love of the game translates into chemistry and into the people around him, which is why he made someone like Strome, who never met his potential, right? Strome was a first-round draft pick of the Islanders way back when, and he just never got to what everybody saw him getting to, right? But playing with Panarin, he had his best season, and he's one of those guys that just really makes people better. The people around them.
I mean, look at okay. Looking back, 77 points in your rookie season is insane. 30 goals, 47 assists, 77. Like, dude, this dude has never Yo, that's wild. He is essentially way greater than a point per game player. He had 96 points last season, 22 goals, 74 assists for 96 points. Like, he is a phenomenal player. I mean, some people thought in Chicago it was due to Kane or Taves. I'm like, no. This guy's just talented.
Yeah.
And they call him the bread man for a reason. He has filthy vision, filthy hands. I think he was dinged up last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I do too.
Because he didn't feel right. He didn't look right.
Yeah.
But, Panarin is a proven winner, proven producer.
11 mil worth? Yes. 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And let's go. So, who would you say is overpaid on this roster?
Overpaid. Honestly, they don't have room to overpay anybody. Everybody they got here pretty much is producing at the rate that they're getting paid. Fortunately for us, as far as like forwards, right? You look at the defensemen. Yeah, same thing. I mean, if you look at points, maybe Jacob Trouba's a little bit overpaid. Maybe he's a 7 mil defenseman, 6 mil defenseman. That's probably the only one. But I mean, what the leadership he brings to that defensive core, yeah, he deserves that 8. So the Rangers have done a really good job getting rid of overpaid players, right? They still carry some of that dead weight. They still have some of that
Dead cap money.
Dead cap space.
Like Shattenkirk for 1.4, Dan Gerard 1.1, D'Angelo 883,000.
Yeah,
which all comes off the book next year, which is key. So you'll have 3.4 million more next year to sign.
We have almost 6 mil because you look further down. We're still paying freaking Brad Richards, who retired 5 years ago. Jesus.
It says 0 for his cap hit right now.
No. Oh yeah, you're right. So I think we just got rid of it. I think because we were paying Brad Richards this whole time, so that alleviated some stuff or whatnot. But let's take a look at all their current players. Nobody's really overpaid, thankfully.
I have one though. I have one for you. Ryan Reeves.
1.75.
I mean, for Ryan Reeves,
for being your tough guy.
I think 1 million is in today's current age. I think that 1 million is like the most I would pay for a guy like Ryan Reeves, but you acquired him in a trade. But that's just my opinion. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, slightly. That's about it. Everybody else is kind of producing to what they're supposed to. Obviously, Trocheck is the new guy in town. That was an acquisition. They signed him, and it was an acquisition this offseason. I think it's a smart move. It's a good move for both him and the team. His style of play already fits what the Rangers do because he played for Carolina, and Carolina is literally a mirror image of the New York Rangers. Like, the way their styles are literally mimicking each other. So I think he'll have no problem fitting. I think he'll find his offense, more of an offensive game here in New York than he did when he was in Carolina, because he will most likely be the number 2 center playing along with Panarin. All right, so people forget that Panarin's also not on the top line in this team, right?
Which is crazy.
Right, it really is. But we have the way that they construct the lines is more based off of chemistry than
which is how it should be. That's how it should be.
More off of chemistry than this guy should be. He's your top player, so on and so forth. So the first line is normally Chris Kreider, Zibanejad. And then you have a couple of different guys that can fill in the role on left wing. Lafreniere, who you want to develop properly, so you put him next to 2 superstars. Then you come down to the second line. You have a Terry Panarin. You had Strome, and then you had someone like Kaapo Kakko, who you tried to develop before he got injured for a lengthy time. You don't forget they also have someone who's on the IR list here, Sammy Blaze, who didn't get to play all season. He had that really, I think he had a, what was it?
Look it up.
He tore something. I think an MCL on what people still say was a dirty hit by Subban in I think it was a preseason game.
Torn ACL.
Torn ACL in a preseason game. And it was one of those situations where he's been a really good player. He was a really good player for St. Louis, and we were expecting to see a lot of big things from him. That injury obviously offset him. But what people don't realize about Sammy Blaze is he's got hands.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah, you
that's
saw the
cheap.
foot. Did you see the foot on Subban? That was kind of dirty, my dude.
I'm not trying to make this into the injury show, but like that's. Hold on,
Yeah.
they're gonna play a replay of that. Like I think Subban's one of the
Oh, we got
dirtier
after
players.
him after that. 2 games in a row. We definitely went after him. But I don't think he's been that type of player, but I think lately with him losing the edge on his speed, a little bit more on power, he's relying a little more on those little tricky plays to take people out. And not saying that he did this intentionally, but I think he meant to maybe throw him off balance a little bit, but maybe got too much. I'm just trying to play it safe.
I'm not, because I think PK Subban gets away with a lot of bullshit. I mean, look at
Here
this.
we go.
Why is your leg extended like that?
Yeah, I don't understand why his leg was extended like that while he was making a left turn in the puck. You know what I mean? Like,
Look at that! Look at that! Look at that! He threw out his right leg. Come on, man.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I'm not trying to make this the injury show, but that's
Right.
That's a dirty play.
But Sammy Blaze, after watching him play a few games for us, whatnot, he's a big boy, right? He's about Ryan Reeves size, whatnot, but he has hands. He is very skilled for his position. He's a winger. I think he is going to bring a different dynamic to the team, and it's definitely going to be one of those things where you're going to be like, wow. I didn't know he can do that, because I know when I saw him, that's exactly what I said. Right?
well. He's still young. He's 26. He has some time.
Yeah.
I like the most important thing I like about you guys, how you construct is just let's look at it. Now, you have Artemi Parents, Zibanejad, Kreider, stars to superstars in the league, correct?
Yep.
You have Vincent Trocheck, who, I've watched him play against the Bruins. Very good center. Very, very good center. You have Goudro, that is a very good player himself. Came over from that Tampa Bay, correctly?
Yep.
And then you have Hedel, who kind of came into his own. Reeves is what he is. You have Lafreniere, who started finally looking like that draft pick. Started looking good. Gauthier, not a bad player. I think Hunt, he is what he is. Carpenter, Kaku's the one here. I don't think in New York, especially with them signing Krasov and essentially guaranteeing him an NHL spot, I don't think Kaku should come back. I think if they're smart, they trade him to another team. I don't think he'll ever develop into a top line guy. I think he's a solid third line type guy. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's enough there. That's at least my opinion.
Yeah, as far as the forwards, to be honest, you look at Julien Gauthier. Honestly, if they trade him away, I'm not hurt by it. I think he's underperformed. I think that he doesn't use his abilities the way he should. He's a fast player, and at times he looks very slow, even though he is fast.
Sounds like depressed.
So he, in my opinion, is underperforming. Dryden Hunt, he's kind of is what it is, and I don't think that his is what it is good enough right now for what we're trying to do. He's one of the guys I believe should move, or be sent down, or just have on the taxi cab squad. Just in case someone gets COVID, something else, he can fill in. Not a bad fill-in guy. Pardon me. Now let's look at Carpenter. The new additions in the forwards, right? Which is Carpenter and Trocheck, right? These guys were brought in for one particular reason. To win faceoffs. To win faceoffs so we can control and use the offensive power that we do have. Because during the playoffs, that is the one place we were exposed, regardless of the series, was we could not win a faceoff. We could not control the game in that aspect. We were always working on a counterattack, right? It was very rare when we controlled any type of faceoff. As a matter of fact, when Johnny Goudreau went out, who was probably our best face-off person, when Goudreau went down, sorry, I said Johnny, it's Barkley. When Barkley Goudreau went down, right, we had the issue where it all fell on Zibanejad, and let's face facts, Zibanejad is a 50-50 type of face-off guy. Sometimes he's going to give you 50%, sometimes he's not. But that's about as good as it gets for him, right? That's the only aspect of his game that I feel he needs to work on tremendously is his face-off ability, right? Outside of that, without Goudreau, everybody else was not winning a face-off. We had no face-off presence, no worries. It didn't matter where the face-off was. That's where we lose games, right? Yeah. And that was extremely exposed when we played against Tampa. They control the game not because they were overall better. It's because they won pretty much every face-off. They beat us in that aspect, which gave them more control of the game.
Well, I agree to some degree, but I do think Tampa was just a better overall team at that point.
They were more experienced, yeah. 100%.
Well, I think that the problem I had with the Rangers is the moment seemed too big for them. Because even in that Carolina series, right, you could not control the puck in the neutral zone. Like, if you played a better team, you wouldn't have even gotten to that Tampa Bay team. Because it was crazy how bad you guys were in the neutral zone in transition. Which I think some of that comes to youth. Because if you look at this team, a lot of young draft picks and some veterans, so sometimes the moments are just a little bit too big.
Again, that was a series that we started without Goudreau in the middle.
Yeah.
Again, we lacked that middle presence, which is why I think they went so hard on this offseason, like saying, hey, listen, we need to establish this middle. We need to get these centers in that can cause that presence. And I'm not saying Carpenter's a world beater or anything like that, but he's a solid guy. He played in Calgary last season. He was okay, third line guy, fourth line guy, cool, right? Then you bring in Trocheck. That means that you can probably move Goudreau to the third line, right?
Which is where he belongs.
Right. Now you have three guys in the middle that can control play and a fourth guy who can just hold it down.
No, you guys got far better. The one thing I will say, the one thing that needs to happen is Adam Fox needs to get better in his own end. He's a tremendous talent. Do not undermine what I'm saying here. But in the postseason, he was terrible at his own end at points. Like, he'd show flashes, but he struggled. Yeah. I mean, he has all the talent in the world, right? Mm-hmm. But he needs to learn his defensive side of the game is the most important. You can be an offensive defenseman in the regular season and forget your own end to a degree, but in the playoffs where it gets a lot more difficult, defense should be your first responsibility. But what I will say, I think Adam Fox has a very bright future to be, that contract's extremely high, but he's worth all the pennies. Jacob Trouba, that's an overpay, but solid defender. Ryan Lindgren, solid. Condre Miller, I like what I saw from the postseason. Schneider, he's not bad.
So, hold on. I want to make this statement, right, public. I have witnesses that will tell you when K'Andre Miller got signed, that by far has been my favorite signing since that moment. And I called him being something special. So far, he is showing up. He's doing everything I expected him to do. And as he gets bigger, one of the comparisons that Ron Greshner, obviously one of the old captains for the New York Rangers, he and I were sitting down for lunch and we had this conversation when that draft class happened. And we could not stop raving about K'Andre Miller. He even said the same thing I did, where we said he can be a Bufflin-type player to make that type of an impact on the Rangers. That is how I feel, how Ron Greshner feels. We had this discussion. We went in for supposed to be like a half an hour luncheon, 45 minutes, something like that, whatever. 2 hours later, we're walking out of the restaurant, still talking about K'Andre Miller. Honestly, yeah. It was just crazy.
I think K'Andre Miller being 6'5" or 6'4", 216 pounds. Let's just bring it up right here before we start closing out the show. He is a big boy, and he's only 22 years old.
And he has hands.
And so last year, 7 goals, 13 assists, 20 points, 82 games played. Good as a defenseman, plus 23. The playoffs, the -5, I'm not going to count on him because when I watched Miller, he played solid, but 7 points in 20 games, that's solid in the postseason. I mean, I listen. I think Keandre Miller has a high ceiling. So, do I think he'll be the next Hall of Famer? And I'm not saying that, but I think as a big body, top type pairing guy that you can pair with a guy like Fox or pair with a guy like Trouba or, be that guy. I mean, I like what I see. I really do. I think he could be a real big difference maker. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the Rangers have been developing
Excuse me.
God bless. So the Rangers have been developing this defensive core for the past couple of years, and it's something to almost marvel at, because before this, they were actually really bad at developing particular players and positions. But since Drury took over, and the moves he's made, the acquisitions he's made, and the way that they're doing training, actually one of my old coaches, Pat Bowler, he's one of the coaches on the
Hartford Wolfpack.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was one of my coaches when I was growing up in high school, and they do a really good job getting those guys ready for that transition from the AHL to the NHL, and they are really good at that. You look at some of the guys that have had to step in during the season for injuries, COVID-related reasons, stuff like that, and they didn't seem far removed from the whole experience or what they had to do. The system that we play in the NHL is the same system that they try to play in the AHL. It's a wonderful development thing. Kudos to Drury for having all this put in place. But now we take a look at the defense core here, and we notice that they're missing someone. Right? Last year we had Nemeth. I wasn't a fan of him. I think we actually played our worst defense with Nemeth there. The numbers will reflect that. If you look at our postseason, we did not win any game that Nemeth played. We do have a few people on defense that can fill in the role. In my opinion, I think that Zach Jones will be the next player to be called up. And I think that he can fill in. But that Niles Lundqvist kid, also another really good prospect.
Okay.
Those two guys I've been literally following for the past couple of seasons.
And there's another guy you have that's kind of a proven NHLer, Jared Tenorti. He's like a good seventh defenseman, sixth guy.
He fills in. He's a big guy, slow, older, veteran leadership.
Oh, you guys signed Louis Domingue?
Yes, we did.
I like that. I like that actually a lot because I think Louis Domingue played fantastic for Pittsburgh. And
sure.
You know what? You know why it's a smart signing? Listen, I like Yaroslav Halak. He was in Boston for a few seasons, but he lost his he obviously lost the job to Swayman that 1 year. But I'll be very honest with you. Yaroslav Halak is older. He's 37 years old. He signed for 1.5. Having someone like Louis Domingue, just in case, is a smart signing. Because you get a guy with some NHL experience that can been proven to be a very capable NHL backup. I actually think Domingue should be an NHL backup. He shouldn't be relegated to a third stringer, but out of all the guys you want, let's just kind of go into it right now. Louis Domingue, in the postseason, my man was a stud. The 902 doesn't explain how good that was. He carried Pittsburgh at points. The last couple of games were rough, but he did a good job in my opinion. Coming in spot start. But Louis Domingue as a career player, 905 save percentage, 3.04 goals against. He's a solid. Is he gonna break the boards down? Absolutely not. But that's a smart signing because if you look at a guy like Halak. I will say this. Halak has a lot of talent, but is he getting a little bit too long in the tooth at this point? That's a question you could ask. Domingue's only 30. Halak's 37. Halak kind of struggled last year with the Canucks. He went
Yeah.
14 games, started 4 wins, 7 losses, 2 overtime, 903 save percentage, like 2.94 goals against. But the thing with Halak is, he'll be a solid backup. Like Shesterkin, let's go to this stud here. This man right here.
This beast.
You play him all the games. If he says, "Coach, I don't have a backup this season," he doesn't have a backup. He plays all 82.
Yeah.
Because 53 games played, 52 started, 36 wins, 13 losses, 2.07 goals against. That's disgusting. A 935 save percentage. Somebody call the ambulance. I'm fucking sick. So
and Vezina winner, baby.
He won the Vezina, which he should have. Nobody out of their right minds voting against him. And he had a great playoffs, a 928 save percentage, 2.61 goals against. Like, it wasn't like he folded in the playoffs. You play this man 50, 60 games at the very least. I think all you need for the backups for the Rangers is 20-something games.
Yep.
Like, he's young enough in his career, you can play him 50, 60 games, in my opinion. Now, you don't want to overwear him where you're going into the 70 range, because we've seen that happen where goalies will get 70 games played, and then in the playoffs, they'll start the tires will fall off.
Yeah, you'll see the exhaustion.
Because you need to give him enough rest where he can recover. But, he's young enough where you give him 50, maybe 60 games, and you get solid 20 to maybe 30 games from your backups. I don't think that's unreasonable. But yeah, I really like how you guys have pulled things together here.
Yeah,
Really
I mean,
nice.
like I said, the development has been something much different. One of the big re-signings this offseason, if you look at the non-roster players, was this Tim Gettinger. He's 24. A lot of people have been very high on him for quite some time. I think he's developed pretty well. He's played in a few games last season, but I think that if he shows out very well in the preseason, he might win a spot. How you call it? Back on a defense. I've heard of this Hunter Skinner. He's supposed to be something good. He was a late fourth round draft pick or whatnot. But people have been pretty high on him. You look at his last season in the AHL with the Wolfpack. 49 games played, 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points only a -1. That's pretty good.
I mean, I'll say this and go into showing Tim Gettinger's elite prospects. Quite frankly, not bad. It's weird, right? Are certain guys at their cap or at their wait, why did this not? There we go. Sorry about that. Why did this, is he at his cap? He's 24 years old, so relatively young. Maybe he's getting there. He's in the mid-20s. Last year with the Hartford Wolfpack as the assistant captain, 45 games played, 10 goals, 15 assists for 25 points. Season before that, 23 games played, 9 goals, 10 assists for 19 points. And, he looks like a productive player at the AHL level. He'll probably be a third liner, something like that. But, yeah, I think, close it out. I think Tampa Bay. The Rangers have a lot of.
That's our retirement home. Just so you know. Sorry, Tampa Bay, but it's facts.
Tampa's got a lot of. Jesus Christ, New York Rangers have a lot of good prospects. Yeah, a lot of upside. So, where do you think they're going to do this year? If you were to say, you think you guys are going to repeat or the same success, fall back, improve?
Brutally honest opinion. It will depend on what happens with the whole Kravtsov, Kaku situation, right? Kravtsov isn't completely on the roster. If you take a look, he's not on the non-roster. He's not on the roster, but we all know that he's been promised a NHL slot along with a 1-year contract. It's just not showing. Kaku, again, he's one of those guys. He's been in development. He sort of found his game there in the right before the playoffs and into the playoffs, along with that rest of that kid line, which is Hedel and Lafreniere. And something I said before, same age range, same mentality. allowed them to really build their game together. Their rotation was really good. Their energy was good. It was said by their coaches. It was said by other veteran players. And they themselves made reference to it. Had they been playing together all season, maybe they would have developed into an even better kid line.
Yeah.
Right? So, curious to see how that would work out if we do re-sign Kaku. As far as Kratov, if he is guaranteed a spot, again, I'm okay with not having Julian or Dryden on the squad, with them being left out. But I would want to see something that makes me say he's worth it, because last season he rejected being sent to the AHL Wolfpack and decided to go back to the KHL to play.
For the Tractor Chimpesines, or whatever you call it. We'll just call it Tractor. 19 games played, 6 goals, 7 assists for 13 points. It's not...
Scroll down so that way we can see it.
Oh, I apologize. It didn't go to that tab. My apologies. Let me... it's on the wrong tab. But, yeah, he looks like a solid prospect. I mean, 13 points in 19 games isn't bad. It seemed like when he played in New York the season before, 20 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. Like, nothing crazy about that. I mean, he's got some potential from what development people have said, scouts. Like, he's got some potential there. But, I mean, it is troublesome in this regard. Like, instead of accepting the grind of the AHL, he runs to the KHL where it's comfortable. Because look at all this KHL, Russia. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that as a Rangers fan, but I think the one thing I worry about is, does he have the mentality to really get that next step, or does he run away when things get too hard? That's the one concern I'd have.
I do have that same concern. I've spoken to a lot of Rangers fans. Everybody has a similar one. A lot of people would rather him not sign. They'd rather us let him go or get rid of him. I want to say that the mentality behind this may also revolve around Shesterkin and Panarin. Yeah. You have two guys that are here, are proven at this point, and they're grinding, they're doing, they're producing, and you hope that they can take him and say, hey, listen, obviously they're all from the same country, speak the same language, and maybe kind of give them that little tutelage to get to the right spot and be in the right place with the Rangers. Maybe that's their mentality right now going into this next season. Again, I don't know why they guaranteed him a roster spot, but if that's the case, I would assume that might be a thing. Who knows? Maybe that's the key part in that second line. Maybe it's Panarin, Trocheck, and Kratov.
Yeah.
Right? And then you keep the kid line together if you re-sign Kaku.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you sign Kaku, I would definitely just keep that kid line together a whole season and let that chemistry they built the playoffs, let that further go develop, in my opinion. Because you got Trocheck as a good second-line center. Zibanejad, your first-line center, obviously. I mean, how do you do that? Like, that would be very interesting to see how that goes. Does Goudro then move to the wing? I mean, that's...
No, I would keep him on third line. I would say, as far as, another winger that they can probably move around there, that's when you look at the Julian Gouthiers or Dryden Hunt, see if one of those two guys wins that spot. I mean, Hunt is more of both of them play right wing, so either one of them. Maybe you go with a Julian to give Mika and Chris that speed edge, because that's really the one thing that they, when they're running and gunning, they're really good, right? So maybe you give Julian during the preseason a look at that right wing and see how he fits with that line. You don't want to sacrifice your centers to play wing, in my opinion. I think that would be a step backwards, considering the moves we made this offseason to acquire centers. and to solidify that center position, we have 5 centers on our roster technically, right? And let's see, one of them is just doesn't play center, right? Goudro, Goudro wasn't really playing center, but when we switched him to center during the later part of the season and in the playoffs, he won us faceoffs. I would say keep him in his natural position, right?
Yeah.
The only person who really, before they had the kid line, Hito was a left. We were playing him at left wing most of the season. So with him moving to center, now you take a look maybe at Carpenter, or maybe they picked up Carpenter because they're not going to sign Kaku, and maybe now you have Lafreniere at right wing, and Hedel a left wing with someone like Carpenter or maybe Goudreau. You know what I mean? But
yeah, there's options. There's options.
There's a lot of options with that. So, I mean, still a lot of things to build on. My honest opinion on where they're going to end up, I say they definitely make the playoffs. How deep in the playoffs depends on all those things we just talked about, right? Because literally this team made it that far off of chemistry.
Absolutely.
Because their skill, I'm not saying that they're bums, right? We have good players, but most of the teams we beat had probably some better players in an overall look, right? But our chemistry is what won us most of our games, and our defense. So what they do with that last defensive spot, and what they do with the Kako and Kratov situation, that will kind of determine on where it goes. So when we make an episode closer to the season and we actually have a roster to look at, I'll give you an honest opinion on where I think they will fall. Right now, I see them making the playoffs. Anything after that is kind of like a gambit. It's it can go either way. I want them obviously to make it all the way, but can't guarantee that. Not at this moment. But I feel really good about it.
All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up everything we wanted to cover for today's episode 1 of The Locker Room. Now, before we head out of here, is there anything you want to say there, Fajardo?
No, I mean, if anybody wants us to look at anything in particular, any teams, any free agents, any restricted free agents, or want to talk about any moves, any signings, any trades in particular, by all means, write it in the comment section underneath. We'll take a look at it, and on the next episode, we will definitely make sure that we let you know who you are and which stories we pick, and we'll cover what you let us know in the comments. And yeah, that's about it.
Alrighty, so for Captain Paul, that is Fajardo, 1BW down below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are a new channel. We are looking to develop. We are going to be covering hockey, but we'll also be covering other sports like the NFL, MLB, anything that kind of tickles our fancy, and kind of go from there. It is greatly appreciated for any comments down below, because how we want to initiate a lot of these podcasts, these conversations, is by interaction with you, the viewer. So any suggestions down below, feel free to shoot it. Like I said, I'm Captain Paul, that's Fajardo 1BW, and we're The Locker Room, and we'll see you in the next episode. Later.
Later.